principal, can I take this home? And it looked like a bag of cookies. And it actually was pancakes that he had for breakfast. But he wanted to take them home so he had food to eat. But the kid he was adorable. He looked like a little angel because he had clothing, he was fine. But he lived with his grandmother, and they lived on Social Security, and they didn't have money for food. I still see that kid's face. It breaks your heart. I was in one school, there was a mother talking to the principal, and she's saying that she can't get her daughter to get on the bus. And the principal said, we're going to help her get on the bus. We're going to be there with her and support her. The mother said, I'm thinking about letting her go, giving her up, which was sad to hear. And then when I talked to the principal, the little girl didn't want to go home because they live in a van, and she felt safer at school. Those are things that you just can't calculate when you're trying to deal with teaching children. We all know, most of us know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you haven't met those basic needs, food and shelter and belonging, you're not going to learn. So these are battles I've never seen before. We have such serious emotional struggles in our district that it's just hard to understand. We have an 11-year-old girl with schizophrenia, and she hears voices and she acts out and starts fighting with people because her voice tells her to. We had a 7-year-old boy that in a second grade class, we had to clear the room because he started crawling and barking and screaming. Again, these issues are not issues most people have to deal with, but that's what our teachers are dealing with. And when you have just yourself in that classroom, it is really hard to do. We also have the issue of drugs. A lot of our parents are struggling with drugs. A few weeks ago, we had a 4-year-old boy half naked walking on the street. The police pulled him, went and found him, took him home. His parents were both passed out from drugs. They had 7 kids. I mean, this is heartbreaking. So yes, we want to help our students perform better. We want to help them achieve, but we have to deal with all these social and emotional issues that are really stopping us from being able to help them learn. The other thing that we deal with is apathy. I've never been in a place where you have parents who just don't care. I think a lot of them, they have so many issues and problems, they just can't deal with it. I grew up in a family that was very dysfunctional, but my parents made sure we went to school. That was important. They weren't really involved in school, but they made sure we went to school. We have parents who don't care. I've had social workers tell me they call home to see where the child is, and the parent will yell out to the child, the school wants to know where you are. They're having the kid tell them what the answer is. So when you look at all these problems, we are still trying hard to fix it and motivate these kids to still learn. But some of the institutional things I've had to struggle with is because our teachers want our children to be successful, they have, and not for a better word, they've kind of dumbed down what they teach so the kids can be successful, not thinking that, yes, they'll be successful now, but next year they're going to be farther and farther behind. So we have changed that. We have purchased new curriculum for math and language arts reading. Our teachers are trying to teach the grade level standards. The issue we had in high school, our ACT scores are really low. Well, when I came to the district, the high school, the math program was freshmen took pre-algebra, sophomores and juniors took Algebra 1A, Algebra 1B. So that means they finished a freshman math class by the end of their junior year. The ACT covers through Algebra 2. Our kids were never exposed to it. So we've changed that. Last year now, they all take Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. But we have to fix our middle school program to have a little more pre-algebra in it. All those things have to start way back from the very beginning. And we're working toward that. We're going to get there, but it's not going to happen overnight. But we have tried to hire math interventionist, reading interventionist. We need coaches. But our biggest thing, again, is supports for our teachers. We need paras for our teachers. I mean, I look at our kindergarten classes and I compare them to where I was, where the kids come in reading. They're all adorable, ready to learn. We have 22 kids in a kindergarten class. Some of them aren't even potty trained. And these teachers work miracles and handle all those issues. And we try to give them paras at the very beginning to just provide support. But those are things we need the additional dollars for. But if we could get smaller class sizes with additional teachers, if we could get more teachers, and if we could pay them better so they stay, that would make a huge difference in what we're trying to do. So again, I apologize I don't have a better presentation, but that's just kind of the basics of the struggles we're having in this district. And we are fighting to help these kids do better. We have the people who want to. We look forward to you being partners to help us because we can't do anything without you supporting us. So I'm happy to answer any questions I can answer.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much for sharing the stories. I think we all have heard and experienced because we're all either parents or grandparents with children in our education system, whether they're in the public school, or charter school, private school. And it's nice to hear educators who get to know their students on a personal basis. You shared a lot, but you didn't really say in that conversation, how are you going to utilize the funds that you're going to be receiving to address a number of the needs that you mentioned as you move forward? And I had a few, when I said we get calls from constituents, we may be elected by people just in our district, but we get emails and calls from people all over the state. And I had one specific question just for you. A constituent had responded to me that there were complaints about the school buses that were students riding to and from school in 100-degree weather without air on their school buses. So could you address that question, if nothing else, so that that constituent will know that I did ask the question?
Yes, and we have addressed that issue. Our problem with everything is we set aside $2.5 million to buy new buses. We will not be able to get them until summer of '24. That's how long it takes to get them. So we have found a place in Vegas that is selling used buses, and we are buying several of these. They're 10 years old, but they have air conditioning, and we are putting them in those schools where they are struggling. But, I think it's interesting because every place else I've been, you've always had maintenance replacement schedules. We haven't had that here. We're working on putting that together because now as things are all breaking down, even with the dollars, it's taking so long to get the parts that it's taking months and months longer. But we are addressing those things. We are looking to improve our bus fleet, and we'll keep looking for the used ones until we can get the new ones. But just so I can share the budget, if you look at, if we give the 10% raise with the PERS and the medical increases, that only leaves us about $518,000 with the amount of money we'll get as an increase. So it doesn't leave us a lot, and we'd like to add a lot of new positions because, again, we need reading specialists, we need coaches, we need math interventionists, we need tutors, to help our students, because what I hear from the kids is there's not enough time for teachers to answer their questions. If there could be someone there to help them individually, that would help. I'd love to do that. So to spend dollars on those types of things, I think would really help us.
Senator Gocochea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just real brief, there was an article in the Prompt Times that said Nye County's teachers' pay was starting at about $8,000 less than Clark County. I mean, how are you going to compete?
Yes.
You're talking about all the programs you want to put in, but
Yep.
It looks like first and foremost, you're going to have to raise the teacher's salary, the base pay.
Absolutely. Our starting salary is $42,000 right now. Clark County's 50. We used to be able to get teachers from Clark County because of our pay was comparable. If we raise it 10%, we'll go to about a little under 47,000. We're still going to struggle. So we have to find creative ways. I hear a lot, housing is an issue. Homes are a little cheaper in the Pahrump areas, so we hope that can help attract people. I'd love to work with the county to try to help some of these builders build us some homes. Because that's the other thing I'm concerned about is Pahrump just approved a 5,100 home development in the southern part of town. 5,100 homes. We have 2 schools there, they're both full. We have all our capacity to build this new school in Tonopah. That's all we have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up. And I understand you are probably somewhat fortunate, though, that Pahrump is more of a retirement community than a young community. And I'm very sympathetic. I know, you've got 4 high schools, Round Mountain, Beatty, as well as Tonopah, and then Pahrump. And, I played basketball in those places like Gabbs and Tonopah. So, the bottom line is, even though they don't have a high school anymore, they did when I was in high school, Gabbs. Long ways.
It's a long ways.
Yes,
5
but I
hours.
appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a 5-hour drive to get to our farthest school from our district office.
Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much. And I know that you're new to Nye County, but just so you know, I was an educator for 30 years in Clark County. And as I always say, I know enough to be dangerous. But one of my questions is, and honestly, it's for all of our superintendents and all of our school officials, is I'm just trying to wrap my head around if we can't afford buses and we can't afford books and curriculum and we can't afford mental health and we can't afford to pay teachers, what are we doing with the money? Because we do have some money. And in the past, we did do some things, even if, I don't know, if you couldn't afford books one year, you might have bought buses, or especially in some of our smaller counties. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around what's going on and where the resources are to what we're getting, especially with the fact that we have ESSER money available. Thank you.
We spent $3.5 million on new curriculum these last 2 years. So we are using those dollars to
Thank you.
get the new curriculum. We have set aside $2.5 million a year for buses. We have them on hold. We are hiring people. Because we can't hire teachers, we're spending a lot of money on virtual and contractors. So we're still trying to meet the needs we have. It's just costing a lot more to do it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to Nevada.
Thank you.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 2 questions. How much are the contractors that you're paying? You said contractors,
Right.
that you're hiring contractors.
How much are we paying them? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? I couldn't tell you that. I'm told it's double what we would pay a teacher in most cases.
And you've been doing this practice since you were there or prior to you?
I can't say what happened prior to me. I can say we've definitely been doing it the past couple years because we haven't been able to find staff.
Okay. And then my second question is different. I'm trying to understand, so you listed a lot of social problems and issues, but what dollars have been expended towards parent engagement? And you did get learning loss dollars, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, because 2 parts there, right? So parent engagement and then the tutoring in order to try to figure out, I guess, how to connect parents to what's going on at the school, because they're an integral part or they're an hindrance, right? At this point, the way you describe the stories, but all the parents can't be messed up. So, what what are you doing, or what dollars are you expending either around social programming in the school, parent engagement in the school, and then tutoring?
Well, we have parent engagement activities at our schools. We've started PTOs at all of our schools so that we can get parents involved. Unfortunately, I think what happens is the parents who you need to come there don't. You always get the parents who are involved with their kids. The hard part is, how do you get those parents there that don't want to come and participate? That's what we're still trying to figure out, because we need to somehow reach those parents.
Just quick follow-up. So do you have any nonprofits that come in that maybe you have a partnership with, that there's some crossover funds that are being used? I mean, because some of the problems, although you're smaller, some of your problems are what's going on in CCSD, right? And so where we've been able to bring in nonprofits or other groups, community groups, to offset, have you tapped into that at all and to try to manage issues?
Yeah, we have a great partnership with the NIE Coalition, and that's a nonprofit group that actually rents out one of our facilities, and they partner with us for clothing programs, for food service, for interviews. We do a lot with them, and they've been very helpful. They actually run the after-school SAFE program for our students. So, and like I said, the Elks, we worked with them. They spent over $5,000 on new shoes for our students.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. And I know you need to leave, but my district represents part of Tonopah, and I'm very interested in rural issues, and especially tribal issues. And I understand at Duckwater, and you didn't mention that school, there's two schools in Duckwater, a public school and then the tribal school, and that you're looking at closing the public school that's been there for 50 plus years. Is there a relationship with the tribal school? Can the kids share schools, and what does that look like?
Yes. You know, we have 2 students there this year, so it's not cost effective for us to keep that. And both of those students are part of the tribe, and they can go to the tribal school. So we've already had that conversation.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I just have one last question. When you said that you're hiring contractors and having to pay those contractors double the amount you would pay teachers, are you also hiring contractors for the duties that support staff are doing? And do you know what those pays are?
No. You mean like paras? Supports, oh, I see what you, like occupational therapists, things like that. Yes, we are getting contractors for those, and those are also costing us like double what we'd pay.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Oh, Assemblywoman Hadigi.
Just along that line of questions regarding the contractor, so you're paying them double what you're advertising the teacher positions for. Why not just increase the pay that you're advertising the teacher positions for? Why not double that?
That would be great. You know, it's because you have unions, we can't just pay anybody anything. We have to work through our union. And for us to say, we're going to pay this much for a speech therapist, we'd have to get the union on board for that. I'm hoping we can have those conversations, because to me that doesn't make a lot of logical sense, does it? That we have to pay a contractor twice as much as we pay a full-time person.
If I could follow up, well, that just, that just tells me that you have the money to pay teachers that much, right? If you can pay contractors that much, then you can pay teachers that much.
Well, we have a lot more teachers than we have contractors. You're down about a handful of contractors and, 700, 600 teachers.
Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick one. But is it correct or incorrect that NIE receives more per pupil money than Clark?
I don't know what Clark receives, but my guess is it's kind of like I got the same question when I was in Tonopah. They were saying you spend more money per pupil in Pahrump. Well, actually, we spend more money per pupil in Tonopah because there's fewer students. So when there's fewer students, it appears to be more money because if you have a teacher for 15 students, that per pupil is a lot more than a teacher for 30 students.
Yeah, that makes sense, and thank you.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you get actually more money per pupil, per your number of students than Clark does. Why is Clark paying their teachers more than you are? I mean, because if you paid them more, maybe you could, how do you compete?
Well, that I can't answer, but believe me, if we had more money, we would pay them more money. We're not stockpiling it or hiding it. We would love to pay them as much as we possibly can because that would help us.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And before going to our last question, with looking over our spreadsheets, Assemblywoman Dickman, you are correct. There's about a $2,000 difference, right around that, between the Clark and the Nye County, with Nye County getting more per pupil. Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, not a question, but just a quick comment. Dr. Schillenberg, some of the stories you told, they're heartbreaking. This can only be described as abject poverty. And it's not unique to Nye County. We have that, a lot of places around the state. And so I guess the only comment I'd make is I would just ask the members of this committee and the legislature as a whole to think about these sort of things when we're evaluating the rainy day fund and what kind of money should be in there, because as I've said before, I think we see for a lot of Nevadans, it's raining right now. And I don't know how much more we could demonstrate that other than some of the stories that you told that you've experienced firsthand. I mean, you're talking about students without shoes, with holes in their socks, without parental support. And so just something to keep in mind as we go forward through this budgeting process, that yes, the state has record amounts of money right now, but we have a lot of needs, and real needs that are existential. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, no other questions. I hope we didn't hold you too long and you make your flight.
No,
And
thank you
don't
so
speak.
much. I'm not
Don't
gonna
speak. All right. With that, we will close Nye County. And we will go back to Humboldt. Thank you.
I am a little disappointed Warren didn't answer any questions for Humboldt County, so
The nerve.
I know. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Dr. David Jensen. I'm the superintendent for Humboldt County School District. I'm pleased to have with me one of my Board of Trustees member, Nicole Bangachia, who also is the president of the Nevada Association of School Boards. So when we complete the presentation, all questions should go to the Nevada Association of School Board president. I think that's where we go. I've been listening to a lot of the questions. First, I want to acknowledge that I think most of us did not come prepared with the specific academic performance indicators, and I know that we certainly can pull that and get it to you. One thing I do want to remind all of our legislators sitting here is we do have the Nevada report card. If you have not had an opportunity to look at the Nevada report card, I believe a lot of those pieces can be pulled up individually for each of the school districts. So just something, as you all have so much downtime, that's an avenue that you can take a look at. So on the screen is my presentation. And again, I'm going to embed and try to answer a lot of the questions that have come up. I've had the fortunate privilege to be in Humboldt County for the past 26 years. I've been the superintendent for 11. I was the assistant superintendent for 5 before that, and associate for a year and a half before that. In each of my capacities as superintendent, due to my training, my primary area of focus is finance, so the CFO role. AJ Fueling, who was your first presenter, and myself also have the privilege of sitting on the Finance Commission, the 11-member commission from Senate Bill 543. And as he waived that document that we submitted back in November, mine's electronic. He walks around old school hard copy. So in Humboldt County School District, we have 3,200 students, and this has actually dropped 200 students from COVID. What we found is a number of school districts is as a result of COVID, they opted for homeschool and have not come back fully into the district. So thank you. I just saw that note to make it full screen. So hopefully everybody can see that. We serve 11 schools. 6 of them are considered remote rural, and that includes McDermott Combined School, which is a K-12 school 72 miles north that is approximately 85% Native American. And then we have 4 remote rural locations that are K-8 locations, and they range from a low of 8 students to a high of about 32 students. Denio, who is our lowest remote rural, sits 100 miles away from the district office and has 1 teacher teaching a grade span of kindergarten through 8th grade. In Winnemucca, we have 5 schools within Winnemucca itself. In terms of our demographics, I know that was one of the questions. Humboldt County serves 55% white, 36% Hispanic, 4% American Indian, 3% identify as 2 or more races. Of those groups, 16% of our student population identifies as special education, and we have 13% of our students identified as English language learners. It's interesting, when we look at our new move-ins, approximately 75% of our new move-ins come in with IEPs, special education. In terms of one thing that I wanted to touch on real quick is our class sizes. As has already been identified in the rurals, we operate under an alternative model, and that's target 16 in kindergarten, 22 first through 3rd grade, and 25 in 4th through 6th. Out of all of our district schools, we request 5 exceptions through the State Board of Education for grade levels. 3 of those are associated with kindergarten because we really struggle to meet the 16-to-1 ratio. We don't have the space in our elementary schools to add additional classrooms. And the others, when we look at it, if we have to put in a variance request, it's because our overall number is less than 1 above. However, it requires a variance. There's also been a question that I think a couple have asked in terms of cost. Denio Elementary School, the one that I identified, has less than 8 kids. It costs us between $30,000 and $35,000 per pupil to operate that school, where in town in Winnemucca itself, to operate it costs a little under $11,000. So that huge difference in cost that school districts, including Clark County, because they have some remote rural locations, that economies of scale piece becomes one of those areas that have a direct impact on us. In terms of our employees, we have a total of 468 employees. 243 of those are certified. I did include our administrators in that number. There's 19 administrators, so that puts 224 certified, which would include our nurses, counselors, social workers. This is all certified positions, not just our teachers. And then we have 225 classified employees, and that includes the gamut from our custodians, bus drivers, paras, on down the line, food service. That gives us a ratio of about 14-to-1, both for our classified and certified, and it's 168-to-1 for our administrative personnel. Our classified generally start out at about $15.67 an hour, and the starting salary for our certified teachers and other members starts generally at about $43,000, and it tops out right now at about $85,000. Our administrators, a new incoming vice principal at the elementary level, would start at about $92,000. Our teachers work 183 days. Our administrators work 213 at the elementary level, 223 at the upper grade levels. A few other things that I wanted to touch on real quickly in terms of graduation rate. We're pleased to announce that in Humboldt County, our graduation rate for the class of 2022 was at 94.23%. So we've done well, but we're also missing about 3.6%, which means we still have a lot of room for improvement. In terms of our utilization of legislative funds, as we start looking at it, and I'll go into a little more detail on this, you see I identify our district strategic plan. And our Board of Trustees, several years ago, we have developed a 5-year strategic plan, and it has 5 key areas that we focus on. That includes personalized learning, MTSS, which you've already heard is the multi-tiered system of supports, at-risk student populations, curriculum and pacing, and improved academic performance, which involves every gamut of the student that we have the ability to serve. This made me think a lot about Speaker Yeager's comments of what are you doing specifically for your at-risk populations. Our Board of Trustees has said this is an area that has to be an integral support. I will call out that at one point we gave great consideration to using some of our ESSER monies to hire EL teachers. We can't find them. And so in the attempts that we've had to bring in EL teachers, we were unsuccessful. That causes you as a board and as a district and administration to rethink what you're doing. So what we did is we reallocated those monies, and what we said to our teachers is we'd love to pay for you to become ELAT endorsed. We pay for the cost for your education, you get the credits, and you move across our salary schedule. Our first cohort is just about ready to graduate, and we will have 10 that will cross that line with their ELAT endorsement, and we're thrilled because what that does is it puts expertise right in the classroom, and the skills that those individuals learn working with our English language learners has application across the board, and so it's had a direct impact for us. Along that lines, our special education student population and at-risk populations are areas of focus, and you'll see under the next page that I'll get to some of our celebrations. I'm not going to walk through all of those, but we have some very intensive focus of training for our new our special ed teachers, because as you've already heard, that's an area we struggle in. In our classes that have the students that have the greatest need, we have the greatest struggle to find fully certified individuals. They have long-term subs in there, and that's not in the best interest. So we're working on how to do that, improve that, and I'll share a little bit more about that with you as we move forward. In terms of how we would use funds, and then I'm going to get into a little bit more meat since I'm a numbers guy. Funding to improve salaries. You've heard that across the board, and we very clearly get that as a message from each of you. When we look at the recommendations for salary increases, it's what we want. If we're going to make education competitive, we're going to have to pay more. I was going to cite it a little later, but if you ever get a chance, there's a study by Allegro. It's in 2022. Some of you may be familiar with it, but what it cited is when you compare educators that leave with a bachelor's degree against any other bachelor's degree, our teachers are making 23% less. And we wonder why our youth are not interested in this as a profession. We must do better, and so that's one of our primary areas. We need to make some interest or find some inroads in finding folks. Our Board of Trustees at our last board meeting just raised our hiring incentive, and this is coming out of general fund dollars. $7,500 for somebody coming into Winnemucca, and we're offering $10,000 if they go into McDermott or one of our remote rural areas. I think that puts us at the highest, and so push everybody else. They've got to raise theirs or we're going to take all their people. And then mental health supports. You've heard a lot about it. Not only our staff, but you've also heard us talk about staff are struggling with their mental health. So we've been able to use ESSER dollars, and I'll speak a little bit about our ESSER dollars for the hiring of social workers to expand those services. Care Solace, you heard about, is implemented in our district. And then we also do some contract services with ELUMA and through UNR. That way for those intensive Tier 3 counseling needs that our staff perhaps don't have the capacity for, we've got an avenue to put our staff and our students in touch so that they get the supports that they need. Continue our focus on our at-risk populations. And then I highlighted one of my concerns is around our declining enrollment. When I first got hired, just a little bit of history, I hired in 1996. In 1998, Humboldt County had 4,200 students. We're now at 3,200. And so we've seen a declining shift even though our community has grown. And then one of the other things that we're really focused on is how do we maintain the efforts from our ESSER ARP funds. And I'll talk a little bit about that real quickly right now. We have been very successful both with the allocation and competitive ESSER grants. We've received 9 of them for a total of $8,101,110. We've expended 69% of that so far, and we have $2,540 or 31% of that remaining. That's intentional because these funds go through 2025, and a lot of what we're doing are coaches, mental health, the social workers, and we want to keep those positions for as long as we can. So we've been fortunate that we've been able to fill most of our positions, and we're intentional in having that carry over so that we can expend it and stretch it out for as long as we can. As you've heard, with the first pot of money, that was all about getting our schools open. So we were buying masks and gloves, cleaners, and the other things that we needed to do just to get going. The ESSER 2, we started buying Chromebooks and hotspots so that as we transitioned into our hybrid model, that students can continue to be engaged. Then we moved into ESSER 3 and ARP. That's when we transitioned into focusing on mental health, MTSS, school resource officers, counselors, and then coaches. And we hired coaches. We've got a literacy coach at each of our school sites, kindergarten through 6th grade. And in terms of a wish, if you hear it from me as a superintendent, these literacy coaches are doing a phenomenal job, and we're doing some work on math. And that part of what we're using the math for now is we found a very strong disconnect between Eureka Math, is what we were teaching at the elementary, and Savvis Math at the secondary. There was no connection, and so kids would transition up to the high school and there would be a gap. So now we're working on aligning that curriculum as well as creating our pacing guide all the way down into, right now we're down to 2nd grade, working on that. And then there were a number of competitive grants that we were fortunate to get that supported special education and social workers. And then we just got another ARP ESSER Summer School and After Schools grant. And that's to encourage our staff to take positions to tutor our students. I will call out what you've already heard. One of the recommendations during, I believe, the last legislative session is to use some funds, and I think Senator Dondero Loop, you were one really strongly behind paying the hourly rate. Even offering our staff hourly rate, they were having their own challenges and were burnt out. And so we really struggled to do that, but this is going to allow us, and as we're able to address mental health, we're offering that hourly rate once again and building our programs hopefully to meet the needs of our kids. So we've been very grateful for that. Few other district-wide successes, and then I'm going to move into some numbers that I want to call out. If you're not familiar, in Humboldt County, Lithium Nevada is just broken ground on the largest lithium deposit in the nation. And that's going to have an impact on our community. They were going to have 198, I believe, semis one-way driving by our K-8 school. Had a meeting, expressed that as a safety concern. They're building us a brand new $15 to $20 million school in Orvada so that we can relocate it and protect our kids. We can't afford to build that school. We've got a rollover bond that generates 13.5 cents per $100 assessed valuation. It gives me about $1.4 million per year to meet the facility needs of a median age of 59 years in Humboldt County. So we're struggling with facilities. And when you read the report from the Finance Commission, it briefly talks about it, but the superintendents have called that out as an area that we must think about down the line. And then the other thing I want to call out as a success is we're just getting ready to expand our partnership with Great Basin College, and we're going to have an associate's degree track, and our first cohort of students will start to engage in that this fall. And so we're really starting to look under personalized learning as making sure that we meet students where they're at. So now let's get into the great stuff, and that's the numbers. So I truly can't express enough my appreciation to the governor's proposal to infuse $2 billion into education. When he talks about $2,000 per student, as you've already heard from a number of school districts, that's not how it trickles through the pupil-centered funding plan. The pupil-centered funding plan, when it was first introduced and rolled out, as you're probably all familiar, simply redirected insufficient resources and distributed it just a different way. And that created a series of winners and losers. Prior to this recommendation of $2 billion, there were still 9 districts that were going to be in that hold harmless status. Humboldt was one of those, which says you've got the same adjusted for enrollment, and keep in mind we're declining, the same revenues as 2020. That creates a big barrier to meeting a lot of the goals and objectives that are collective between us. So once the funds go through the waterfall and certain districts eventually move out of hold harmless, fortunately we were one to move out. I truly feel for the 3 districts that still are in hold harmless, because that's going to create some challenges for them. So as you look for fiscal year 23, our total funding, and this does exclude the federal funds, is $36,922,068, or $11,183. We get 2.3 additional dollars proposed FY24, an additional 1.7 in proposed FY25, for a total new infusion over the biennium of 4.1 million. The next slide underneath there on the governor's proposed shows where we're at. I did find an error. If you look at auxiliary, that first column that says 166,295, that should actually be 1,666,295. And then the difference across there, and as you might recall, auxiliary is your transportation and food services primarily. We are seeing an increase. Our special education actually drops. And then under the weights, our EL does go up, but our at-risk drops. So one of the questions was, do you feel like the pupil-centered funding plan is capturing all of your at-risk? The answer to me is absolutely no. We are missing some kids, and the hard discussion is I think at certain times, perhaps all of our kids are at risk. That's not what this is intended to do, but the dynamics in Humboldt haven't changed, yet the resources will change. And so how do we, even sitting on the commission, we're using Infinite Campus and that formula to define at-risk. I can't tell you exactly how we get there. And the goal ultimately with the people-centered funding plan was transparency. So as a commission member, we would all tell you we've still got some work to do. So that's where we fall on that one. Total funding in year 1 will go up 978, 532 in year 2, and for a total amount of $1,510 over the biennium. In looking at how that flows out, and I didn't start to try to calculate how much our liability insurance is going to go up, because I don't know yet. If we were to keep all of our ESSER funds in positions, I didn't include that in there because most of them we're going to keep through 2025 using our existing ESSER ARP funds. So what I focused on is what we know through the negotiated agreement is step and column that you've heard about it. What we know is the PERS increase. Because that's going to be a difficult conversation with our bargaining groups. So I believe you're hearing most of us are saying we're going to absorb that cost increase. Largest single PERS increase I've seen in my 26 years. And then our health insurance, we've negotiated where it's 6% on the district, and if it comes in higher than that, it becomes a cost share with our employees. So in year 1, 2.3 million new increase for us. Annual step-in increases at that 448. PERS is going to cost us about $950,000. Health insurance about $174,000, and that'll give me about $773,000 remaining. If I combine that within the year 2, and we do those similar deductions, we'll at the end of it, we have about $1,714,375 available for us to now start having those conversations. We haven't front-loaded decisions. As you've heard, we're fortunate in this state that most of our relationships with our bargaining units are pretty strong. And we've got a great relationship with ours as well. We need to sit down with our bargaining units first and say, here's what we've got, here's what we would like to do, and then go through the negotiations process. And so I want to be careful on that as well. We did take a look. Each 1% would cost us about $250,000. So at 1%, we'd have 1.4 now to redirect to these other pots. If you go to 5, we've got 494,000 remaining. But once we start shifting past that into the 10%, now we're in the red, where we don't have sufficient projected revenues to provide the compensation at those levels, even though we would love to. Sitting on the Finance Commission, as you read that report, we're asking for 10%. When you read the NSEA and you read the letter that was referenced from Senator Dennis, it's 20%. So if we looked at between the 10 and the 20, the allocation that's coming to Humboldt and to a number of districts, we simply don't have that available. So how would we like to use the resources? Our first emphasis is on staffing. And I think I need to transition into a piece I missed. Due to retirements and resignations right now in the district, we have 24 teaching vacancies. 24 teaching vacancies. We've got some administrative, and we're always dealing with classified. We're struggling with custodians and bus drivers as our two biggest classified needs. But of those 24 vacancies, last year, and as we're closing out this year, we have 14 of our certified positions that are filled through long-term subs. And so those are positions that we had budgeted, we wanted to pay, and we wanted to incentivize, but we couldn't find the people to do that. Recruitment and retention funding, you heard about what we're going to be providing. We did use some ESSER dollars to support that. We would like to reduce class sizes. We're pretty good in Humboldt. But the last thing I want to do as a superintendent is submit a variance request to the State Board of Education. And because we as a board and as a superintendent, we tell our teachers, here's the targets we'd like to keep them there. So we would like to reduce those classes. Obviously, the work that the ESSER funds have done is critical. We would like to keep those positions, increase our professional development opportunities. We would love to extend contracts for our teachers outside of the regular direct instructional time for professional development, so we don't have to pull them away from kids during the year for professional development activities, and then enhancing our partnerships with local colleges. Then you can see through here our mental health and the work that we need to do along in there, and I won't read those to you. You've got them in front of you. The final thoughts that I'd like to just emphasize, and again, we knew sitting as a member of the Finance Commission as we transitioned to the pupil-centered funding plan, it was going to cause some pain for certain districts. I can tell you and attest, Humboldt took some pain, and at May 2022, we took pain in the amount of $4.7 million that we did not see coming. And that was due to this last-minute determination that the language would sweep that for what we thought was the final net proceeds of minerals. That was going to be our opening fund balance and the basis for us to have fiscal stability as we move forward. That moved Humboldt County for the first time in all the years that I've managed the funds to where we didn't think we would be able to muster a 4% ending fund balance. And for a district that had taken pride in being fiscally responsible to all of a sudden go to our communities, our board, and our teachers, we don't have the money anymore, was devastating. The sustainability of funding certainly is a big question. For the years that I've been here, we've seen the ups and the downs. Each of you have as well. We're in an up right now. But how do we respond when the downs come again? And if we give the substantive pay increases that we would all like to do, the last thing I want to ever do as a superintendent is say, well, now we've lost resources, which means we have to lose people or negotiate pay raises. And then the ESSER ARP has had a huge impact. And then the last thing I'll just leave you with is it goes to what I think Senator Dondero Loop said, is if there was one grandiose vision or thought, what would it be for you? And I think Senator Dondero Loop knew Bob Dolezal. You remember Bob Dolezal? Some of you may have known him. He was the superintendent in White Pine, and I counted him as a mentor for me. And as we would all often talk about education and what we need to do as superintendents, he would classify it this way. He would say, Dave, education needs CPR. And I'd go, all right, Bob. And once he'd tell you which eye to look at, he would then give you the answer. And C, compensation. We must compensate our educators at a level that this is a competitive field where they want to go and where they want to be. P for us is PERS. Seems like each legislative session, PERS comes into question, whether it's going to be a defined benefit or a defined contribution. And as we've heard our colleagues talk about, PERS is definitely a retention piece. But then finally into R is respect. We've got to bring respect back to education. I can honestly tell you that a number of our teachers do not feel respected. And as a result of that, they are starting to question if they want to stay in this field, and people are leaving early because they don't feel respected. That's not on you. That's not necessarily on us. All you have to do is turn to the media. And so those are the areas, if I can call out the one thing that I can emphasize is if we think about education needing CPR, together we can provide that CPR, and my hope is we can bring education back to life. And with that, Nicole will answer any questions you have.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation, Nicole. I think we have a few questions for you. We are going to start with Speaker Yeager and then go to Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here again, and thank you for the presentation. I, again, appreciated that there were some very concrete items on here. Very interested in, very happy to hear what you did with the English language and the ELAD certification. I think that makes a lot of sense. So my real question would be, given the funding, additional funding you're going to receive, and I heard loud and clear that, you know, educator pay and support staff pay is a priority, as it should be. But realistically, what do you, out of all these really great items on here, what do you think you're going to be able to continue, or are there priority things such as the ELAD certification that you're looking to try to amplify in the next biennium?
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Dave Jensen. So one of the first things that we're looking at doing is continuing the ELAD. We had that first cohort that's coming to conclusion. We started with 14. We're going to end with 10. We feel like we're starting to build momentum, so we want to keep that going. The second thing then for us is, as I mentioned, we've got literacy coaches that are currently being funded through the ARP grant. We need the math. Once we finish our work on the math scope and sequence of instruction, tying Eureka and Savas together, our staff are saying we need somebody, just as they're working on literacy, we need the supports in math. Because if every other district is like ours, you put a focus and you see growth in English, which we're getting right now, but our math begins to decline. We can't afford that for our students and our state students. So we want to put our money there and to see what we can do. And then the third area for us is around the safety and the mental health. We have to keep our social workers. What a powerful impact they're having, because when we recognize not only our students, but our staff and our parents need some mental health, and that includes school resource officers. They make a difference in our schools. So that's where anything that we have that we can apply, those would be our preliminary priorities. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Superintendent Jensen. I appreciated your presentation and your frankness about the at-risk component of the per pupil centered funding. We've been talking about that a lot in our committees, and it was refreshing to hear your perspective on it, and also looking at how Humboldt County School District is going to lose at-risk dollars, even and you're getting a little more, it looks like,
In
EL, however those dollars follow students. So this is just maybe hopefully a comment is hopefully next year we can see what you did and if hopefully they're staying in the same school to provide for those students. But my question for you was your excitement about being able to provide these literacy coaches and academic coaches. With that, how much has Humboldt County been like working with the Nevada Department of Education with those coaches? I was just curious, if any, if at all.
We haven't. It's been directly tied to our strategic plan and the site school performance plans to support our teachers in meeting those goals.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Let's see, what am I going to ask about? Before doing so, though, Superintendent Jensen, I know we've had many conversations, and I always appreciate your candor as well as the fact that you love public education. So how much training and/or money is being used for training around restorative justice, progressive discipline plans, and SEL programming at the school site, not at the district?
Thank you, and I apologize because I actually had it written down right here to answer. I don't have a dollar amount for you, so I just wanted to share that. And so the short answer to the longer question is we start with our administrators. And if you do know, if the name's familiar, Ann Alexander, very well-known and respected attorney. We have her come in each summer and work with our administrators and train them. And the laws, as they change around restorative justice and progressive discipline, she starts with our administrators. From there, with our administrators and certain members of our staff, I wanted to say leadership team, but it's not necessarily just our leadership team. They have been trained in restorative justice practices, as well as social emotional learning. They then go back to their schools with the administrator and those team members, and during their staff meetings, they provide the training to the staff as a whole. In terms of social emotional learning, our curriculum, we're utilizing a program called First Step in K through 4, and we're using Wayfinder in the upper grades. Thank you. And I apologize I didn't get that answered.
I got to give it to you, though. You did really good listening to the presentations in front of you and getting all the answers. Assemblyman Miller.
Thank you. So you mentioned several times about being on the commission, and I'm curious, if I'm not mistaken, Humboldt won't have any gifted or talented student funding going forward either, right? So as we look at how those weights were determined, and I appreciate you, like my colleague said, I appreciate you acknowledging that there are some challenges with the at-risk determination. But can you just provide us some context on how the commission settled on the current weight structure?
Geez, I look at AJ, who isn't even here to bail me out on this one. I think it went back to the APA studies that had some general recommendations around the weights and what they recommended, and then we had some conversations. So I'd have to get back to you on how we got those decisions. I don't want to speak incorrectly on it, but I will share in terms of Humboldt County, we haven't had a quote-unquote state-approved GATE program ever. And it is not that we don't have gifted and talented students in our district, because we do, and we try to address them on our own, but we've not received any funding because of the specificity of the qualifications that were required to be recognized at the state level. And so we didn't pursue it, but I can get you more information on how we got to those weights.
Okay, thank you. And I imagine that we definitely have some gifted and talented students across the entire state.
Yes.
And that just may be something we need to reconsider as a whole, is how we determine gifted and talented students and funding, providing the necessary funding for them, as well as how we look at our at-risk population and identify that, yes, maybe 20% are the most severe, but we've got a strong population that we could maybe just get right over the hump if we were able to focus on them and include them in some different programming. So thank you I just wanted to get some context on that since you mentioned being on the commission.
Members, any other questions? Senator Gokachia.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment. I was, more than anything, I was glad you brought up, there is a certain economy of scale, and I want to bring that up with Elko County as well, where they've got 7 high schools. You're the same way, Winnemucca and McDermott, and those small rural schools. It's hard to find an economy, even with a $2,000 a student raise. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much for adding that. Members, any other comments or questions? See none, thank you. And thank you for being so attentive to cover a lot of those questions in your presentation. I appreciate that. All right, moving along. Next up, we have Lander County. Welcome, Mr. Klein.
Thank you. Russ Klein, Lander County Superintendent. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I too have a little bit of background in finance. Graduated with a degree in finance originally, spent 10 years before I came into education. So, and then in a former life, earlier in my career, actually worked in the state of Utah for the Department of Ed in their Assessment and Accountability division back in the No Child Left Behind AYP days. So a little bit of finance, a little bit of accountability background there. So I'm just going to go through basically very quickly the money things for Lander County. Just a little bit about our district, 1,000 students, so a very round number. Humboldt, Churchill, 4 times our size. Lyon, Elko, 10 times our size. Clark, 330 times our size. It's a very round number, kind of easy to calculate. Esmeralda, maybe 1/10 our size. But we're in Battle Mountain, midway between Reno and Salt Lake on the Interstate 80, and have 1 high school, 1 junior high, and 1 elementary. And then 90 miles to the south, we have 1 school of 6 students that is 90 miles from anywhere. And so when you talk about that, the economies of scale, your per pupil, Dave was saying $35,000 in Denio. It cost me $40,000 per student for those 6. So extreme cost in some of those things. And not to get into Warren's thing, but the whole thing of between Nye and Clark County, that whole economy of scale, when you look at the distances for Nye County and the traveling and everything he does, there's no way that he could do it for the same cost per student. Traditionally, we're funded at just a little over $12 million a year, so $1 million a month. The math is pretty easy here, so I rounded it off just to kind of cut things short. Just to stay at a break even, over the past 3 to 4 years, my health insurance, I'm $324,000 overspent on that. The cost increase in health insurance just continues to go against us. So Senator Dondero Loop, I know you ask, what is it we're going to do with the new money? Much of what we're doing is just actually filling holes that have occurred to us along the way to simply try to get back to break even. Increase in utilities. Over the past 3 to 4 years, I had my accountant go through $295,000 more that I pay per year in utilities. It's just the reality of what I have to pay more. Same funding, higher costs. Increase in PERS, and I wanted to make a comment on this. Again, I spent 20 years in the Utah system. I've been in Nevada only for 11. But Utah actually reduced their PERS benefit from 2% down to 1.5%. And so a teacher after 60 years instead of getting, or after 30 years, instead of getting 60%, they'd only get 45%. absolutely saved the state money, but just diluted the entire system. And so as we look at PERS and the increases, and I understand that it costs that much to stay fiscally sound for us, I don't think it would be prudent to lower it because if I were to say, for example, I start cost sharing with my employees and I say, you start paying $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year of the PERS contribution instead of me paying it, I'm just taking it straight out of their payroll. And so I could say, I'm having them pay. I pay them a $1,000 increase here, but I make them pay a $1,000 cost there. And so there's nothing with PERS that we can control. I think that really is a state level question. But to dilute that system any further, I think would be unwise because, for example, in Utah, they still collect Social Security. So if you do the math, that after 60 years at 2.5%, a teacher here, say they're making $60,000, and then they get 75% of that. I don't know. Let's say that their retirement is $60,000. In Utah, their retirement might be $50,000, but they get $25,000, $22,000 Social Security on top of that. And so we can brag, and I do when I go to recruiting, talk to students about, but our PERS system is 2.5%. Well, it's now dropped down to 2.25%, compared to other states. It looks attractive, but when they go to retire, anyone in the PERS system knows it doesn't qualify Social Security. So, sorry, just a little, I digress on that one. The lanes and steps, that's an automatic. Every time we advance years, teachers get paid 17 years now instead of 16. They're on step 22. They're on step 27. That's an automatic increase in costs. If the funding doesn't, if the revenue doesn't increase, our costs have increased. And again, what we have is just diluted from that. And I'm just going to put in here in my district, because I'm so small, I see things that happen on a scale that in Clark County would be absorbed at a much higher scale. In the past 3 years, I have had to go, when a student moves in, as Dave mentioned, it may be 75%. I know at least half of the kids who have moved into our district come with an IEP. Some of them very severe needs. The number of students requiring a one-to-one aid, literally I have to hire a full-time person for that one student. In the past 3 years, I've gone from 11 in the district to 19. So 8 staff positions for 8 students, and that's $383,000. That is not anything I'm ahead on. It's not anything I get to spend more money or do with extra money. It's what I have to do to break even. So if you look at that, just on these costs to break even, I'm out of money. I don't have any money for increases. Now, how it flows out and what choices we make, rob Peter to pay Paul, we'll do those things. I did want to go just quickly, if I can try to pre-answer questions. I'm going to do my best on administrative. Someone had asked about administrative. I have one per building, a principal at the high school, junior high, and high school, and me. That's it. I will tell you that as hard as it is to find teachers, it's even harder to find administrators. I paid a company $1,000 to advertise to 4,800 email addresses in the western United States to fill a junior high principal position. I had 5 people from out of state who had applied. All 5 of them, when I started calling to get references before we started interviews, when their district found out they were going to leave, they offered them a promotion internally, and all 5 of them withdrew their names from consideration. I had 2 people who applied for one position, and I ended up taking them both because I had a surprise need at the high school. So I was fortunate to get 2 applicants for 2 positions. On the restorative justices issue, as a district, we have district-wide. Again, we don't do anything per school. Anything we do, our professional development, we're all one team. We're all there in town. We do it holistically there. We've had a focus for 3 or 4 years now. Number one, does the consequence teach or reteach the desired behavior? Just district-wide, is that the focus? Is that what we're doing? However we treat the child. And then number two, is the relationship helped or harmed in the process? And so at that very base level of restorative justices, my background, I was the principal at the Nevada Youth Training Center in Elko, a corrections facility for youth. And we were looking at it then, even before it was here. But absolutely believe in the fact that it's built on relationships, and are you dealing with a child individually? On the social and emotional world too, I just wanted to point out. Normally, a district our size might have 2 MTSS personnel, multi-tier system of support. I have 5. I have hired everyone who would take a job and created a tier where they can go back to school. So someone talked, she might be the Assemblywoman Peters, who just left, on the funding of the social work. So I'll let someone fill her in. The reason that isn't helping us is because that money that was put towards social workers only pays for schooling and travel and limited things. It doesn't pay for salaries. And so if I don't have money for salaries, it comes straight out of the general budget. Before the funding formula change, we had social workers funded. When that changed, I had to absorb it into the general budget. I literally have 5 for my 1,000 students. I have a 200-to-1 ratio. That's probably the best in the state, but it is something that I have been committed to. I'm sorry. My story was a high schooler who attempted suicide. And the deputy came in and everyone responded, and she needed to be admitted. And so, because we're so rural, I'm sorry.
Take your time.
We don't have community resources. We don't have a psychiatrist in town. We're 4 hours from Reno. And we don't even have the ability to transport to the facility. So the parents agreed that they would transport the child to Reno. An hour and a half into the trip, she convinces her parents, "Oh, I changed my mind, I won't do it anymore, I'm good, and let's go back home." And they did. No. I'm sorry. It doesn't have the unhappy ending, so she's still around. It doesn't go any worse than that. But the thought of what it is, the challenge that we have, the 3 of my social workers have been working toward their LCSW. For a town of 3,000 people to have 3 LCSWs in town, but the fact that I have to fund them out of school funds, because the community and the state doesn't have the capacity in the system to provide what we need, we're doing what we have to do for the kids. So we are having to fund positions with education dollars that we shouldn't have to, but because of our rural location and what it is, we're doing what we have to do. Okay, sorry about that. Class sizes. K3, we have each cohort is about 85 students per cohort. So in our lower grades, we go 4 teachers. It's about a 20-to-1. In our after that, we'll go down to 3 teachers. We'll hit class sizes of 25, 27. But absolutely manageable. Recruiting, I want to share just a few things on recruiting. I know there's been talk about bringing students in. I have taken a personal role for 5 years now in recruiting as a superintendent. I personally go to the career fairs. A year ago, I went to Missoula. Rural college has kids growing up rural. They could work rural. We got into the ballroom, and there were 60 districts from California to North Dakota, all of the western states. 60 districts had come to recruit students. When the career fair started, there were 38 students to be had. That's it. Because everyone else had been offered a job already. Western Montana University out of Dillon used to produce a number of graduates. We have a strong connection. A lot of people from Montana live in town. They don't even let out-of-state people come in anymore to recruit. This year, BYU shut us out. They won't even let us into the career fair. So the option of getting them from anywhere else, it just isn't happening. So we have been working heavily on the Grow Your Own. 25% of my teaching staff is not certified. 25% of my staff is not certified. They are ARL in one form or another. They're going to school to become a teacher. So we're asking them to be a teacher when they haven't even been taught to be a teacher, and they have kids at home, and we're asking them to do 2 full-time jobs. So, and yet we want academic outcomes and everything to continue going up when we're just surviving. I can tell you in my district, and I'm the baby boomer here, but we have been losing so many teachers as the baby boomers have left the profession that, and I came in and I told my school board, my objective is to find our next generation of teachers. We ran a seniority list the other day that for the union you need to produce a seniority list every year. And it had one teacher at 29 years, one teacher at 28 years. The next most senior teacher in the entire district is 16 years. So now not only do I have non-certified teachers, but everyone is young, and all of a sudden the need for professional development has just increased tenfold. So those are the challenges we're doing with the existing dollars. Okay, I talked about PERS. What we've done with our ESSER dollars, bought the one-to-one technology. Because we're so rural, many people don't have Wi-Fi, so we need to provide a MiFi is a hotspot that you send home. It costs us $40 per student per month. And that's another cost that we take in order to give the kids internet accessibility in their homes. Anyone who needs it, all they do is tell us and we pay for it and provide it. We had our entire ventilation systems done. Intervention, I hired 7 instructional aides because that's what we need to do. We need to recover. We need to address the learning loss that's been happening. And we've worked on our schools to make a single point entry. We now have the double door portal where you come in, you'd have to be buzzed in to get into the school. Rural school, you'd think you wouldn't need that. We would hope we never would. And yet, what do you hear on the news every time? It would never happen here. And so we have spent our money on that. We have spent a lot of the money on ventilation systems and even locks. It cost $80,000 just to change out the locks in 3 buildings just so that the teacher can push the button and close the door. Because if they have to fumble for their keys in the event of, God forbid something should happen, they can't. So we spent $80,000 just to replace the key core in every one of those doors. Again, doesn't do a darn thing for academic outcome, but it's something that we feel is necessary. And I'll just point out on the whole Capitol building, I just have to echo what's been said already, and that is we have $0. $0 funded, and we beg of you, find a way to get us money because our buildings are falling apart, and we have no money for our buildings. And if it costs $383,000 for aides, it costs $70 million for a high school. And so we just don't have any money. Summer school, we added everything there. We started adding busing, provided transportation. We had never done that before. We did breakfast and lunch for those summer school kids. We paid the teachers an extra $10 an hour to come and do it, to get enough staff to do it. Those are the things we've done with existing funding. And then I mentioned the community services, and I'll just address the at-risk calculation. In my mind, and I haven't gone through the details a lot, but if I understand that the FRL is pretty straightforward, anyone who's free and reduced, qualified, that fills it out. Some counties, as they've mentioned, have a 100% rate, because if you hit 90%, you're automatically, everyone is. So I don't know if they felt that that was unfair, and some districts were getting more than others or whatever. If I understand the new calculation to be at risk of graduating, my guess is that that takes the 9th graders up through 12th grade who are either failing on credits or have dropped out or at risk. They're 2 or more credits behind, whatever that calculation is. It absolutely does not take into account everyone who is at risk, because that would only take 9th to 12th grades. How many kindergartners to 8th grade are at risk that we know well before they get to 9th grade that they're at a high risk of failing graduation? So anyway, that's enough. Hopefully I pre-answered some. I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with your last statement, like 100%. Chair Dondero-Luke.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to expose your district and your feelings. I think sometimes when you're in a tiny town, and not to dismiss those of us that come from a big urban area, but when you're in a tiny town, you really can't escape it, right? It's right there. And I don't think that we can continue teaching as teachers without addressing mental health. Yeah. We just can't. And we have got to marry those two things, because we have too many kids, and by the way, their parents, in crisis, right? So that's, I'll stop there so that you know where I'm at, and you know how I feel, and you know why I do mental health bills, because I feel very strongly about it.
Thank you.
And I also will comment on the summer school. We heard from a couple superintendents that felt like maybe summer school, they couldn't find teachers or what have you. My experience, my personal experience with my grandchildren, and some of the comments that I have heard, is that teachers are actually very excited about summer school because they like the fact that they can interact with kids on a very different level. It's not just credit recovery, right? They've got K through 8 kids that they're showing science lessons to, or they're doing fun experiments, or showing them art lessons, or whatever they're doing. It's not just sitting in a desk practicing math.
They actually offered 8 or 9 clubs, and one was cheerleading,
yes,
and one was something else.
There we go.
All of those things.
My granddaughter, who is in 2nd grade, has called several times a week asking me about the summer school bill, because she has, in her mind, if she doesn't go to summer school, she just wants to keep going. And she's down in Las Vegas, so I have dubbed my summer school bill the Eliana bill. So whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know, but my experience has been that the kids really enjoy being able to interact on those different levels, which, by the way, I believe helps with their mental health.
Our number one objective this year as a district has been re-engagement. We feel over the past 2 years, students and families have disengaged.
Right.
And so the number one objective we've had all year long for everyone across the board is simply re-engage the kids and their families.
Well, thank you for that. And once again, thank you for doing what you're doing, and thank you for believing in your teachers and helping your kids. And we're all working to make education better for our kids, but we all have to remember that it not only takes heart and soul, but it takes funding, and we all have to get behind that. We can't just continue to say, it's somebody else's problem, right?
And I want to acknowledge that. To every one of you here, we appreciate what you are doing to get us the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker Yeager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your work in the juvenile justice system. I mean, it's clear to me that you see things in that system, and I think that compassion and empathy really serves your district well. I just had a question. I understand the breakdown on here essentially looks like the projected increase in funding is going to more or less be eaten up by these 5 bullet points. And if you explain this, I'm sorry, it's been a long day, but what is the increase in one-to-one aides that's listed at $383,000?
And I do want to, there's a sign here that says it's unlawful to misrepresent. So I just want to tell AJ, oh, he's not here, but when he said Carson is the best, I'm going to tell you, someone ought to contact the Ethics Commission on this one. But no, some of these, for example, my utilities, that's over a 3 or 4 year period. So not all of these are a 1 year thing, but on the one-to-one aides are students who have moved in or who have come into the system in early childhood, kindergarten, who require a one-to-one aide. I've gone over the past 3 years from a need for 11 of those to 19. So 8 additional staff that is a full-time person to attend to one child.
Senator Neal, and then Senator Gokachiev.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank both chairs, Dondero Loop and Monroe Moreno, for having this hearing. It's been eye-opening for me as chairing revenue on the level of poverty that's going on within the different counties. And I think, it's really making me re-examine revenue. It's making me re-examine what economic development should look like in the rest of the state in order to support an educational agenda, right? If you don't have any money, your people don't have any money. And so I've been in this building for a long time, but I always assumed it's because you didn't want to raise any money for yourselves. But you don't have any money to get from them, right? It's like peeling money from a turnip.
Well, and sorry to interrupt, but if I may go a step further, with the new funding formula, what the law did is it took all local revenues, including net proceeds, which Lander was very grateful for and built a brand new elementary from. All the local revenues now go into one main pot at the state and then get redistributed out. So there are no local revenues to be had anymore. We have no option.
So it's a comment, and so I appreciate this education because it's making me do a reset. So when you see some of my tax policy come out, don't come out with hate because it's probably going to be amended. But because I'm literally processing right now about how do I get money from someone who can't pay for themselves, can't pay for their children, and thank you for the education, because I appreciate it as, on the revenue side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just right along the same lines. But again, now with the shift from the Nevada plan to the per pupil, but again, we left the 25 cents brick and mortar portion of that tax back to the local jurisdiction, right? So I guess I'm kind of struggling. I know you've got a good net proceeds, so you still have some bonding capacity, correct?
Yes, bonding to borrow money and then pay that back there. Yeah. So you're correct, and I didn't mean to. I was incorrect on that. They did have that. They do have that sliver.
I appreciate that because I do have some other jurisdictions that don't even have that left.
Yeah.
You're fortunate, even though you do have to borrow it, it's still there.
Yes.
But I do appreciate it. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Members, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I thank you so much for your presentation.
May I now switch hats?
You may switch hats.
Okay. I am representing Pam Teal for Lincoln County. Lander and Lincoln come alphabetically. Pam has asked me to present for her. And I just need to let you know, Pam Teal is the vice president of the Nevada Association of Superintendents. She is a phenomenal individual. She is 7 years in her school developing a level of academic achievement that is just unparalleled in the state. She has done a tremendous job. She is just a tremendous leader. And she, I'm just going to read, she was not able to be here for personal reasons, felt terrible about it, told me she had hotel reservations, flights, and everything. She was going to be here, but is unable to be here. So with that, if I may go through for Lincoln County. She states, I trust all of the other 17 school superintendents to speak on behalf of Lincoln, but seeing how similar we are to Lander, I've asked Russ Klein to speak. And just to let you know, Lander is 1,000 students, Lincoln is 850. So we're pretty much sister districts in many, many ways. Lincoln has been on the path to empower students and continuously improve student outcomes for 7 years. As a recovering kindergarten, pre-K, and special ed teacher, I know the only way to improve student outcomes is to ensure our teachers have a quality structure, materials, and time to plan and implement quality Tier 1 instruction. Lincoln's Empower Graduate structure does just that, aligns all spending to ensure improved student outcomes. We must have quality teachers in the classrooms to make this possible, and just like all of the other districts, teacher vacancies are a real concern. We must have an improved state accountability system to support the Empower Graduate. Lincoln County, serves 875 students with 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and a youth corrections school spread between 81 miles of the county. We have 6 staff at the district office, including the superintendent, 10 administrators, 75 teachers, and 60 support staff. Traditionally funded at $12 million, projected increase of $1.8 million, again, very similar to my district. Projected increase will help with anticipated increased costs of health insurance of $153,000, utilities $50,000, PERS $295,000, lanes and steps $352,000, sustained technology $80,000, higher teacher vacancies $270,000 for a total of $1.2 million, which would leave about $600,000 to look at teacher increases. And if I can use her time to say one more thing that I meant to mention, and it has been mentioned already, but it's the ongoing this year and next year. And so even in my negotiations, I'm going to have to be talking about 1-year bonuses or 1-year increases because I'm just not guaranteed beyond that. And that's a real concern, is we have to be very careful in promising increased wages that are ongoing with individual or one-time monies, if you will. Anyway, the amount needed for a 10% salary increase in her district would be $1 million. Thank you for the increased education funding to get us closer to adequate. Please know our Nevada students deserve nothing less than optimal funding. Pam Teal.
Thank you so much for wearing 2 hats today for us. And when you talk to Pam, tell her I hope everything is okay. She did call yesterday and let us know that she wouldn't be here.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. And with that, we will close both Lander and Lincoln County, and we'll move on to Lyon County. And guess what, folks? We're almost finished. There wasn't enough excitement in there.
Well, good more afternoon to everyone. My name is Wayne Workman, and I have the privilege of serving as the superintendent for the Lyon County School District. I have with me Bridget Peterson, who is currently our board clerk for the Lyon County School District. She has served as the board president. She has also served as the president of NASB and Nevada Association of School Boards in the past. And many of you may see her as she is a policy advocate and certainly an advocate for our students in the state of Nevada. I do not have anything to project, but I trust that all of you received our handout. And so I would like to just go through that. I did learn that my first order of business is to talk to my county commission about changing the name of our county so that we are first on the list instead of at this point. So we're going to go with aardvark, if that's okay with you, Senator Titus. I'm sure that fits very well. But with that said, I also want to, first of all, thank all of you, because I know that you, as we, are spending time away from our families here today. And I also recognize wholeheartedly that you are passionate about the education of our students in the great state of Nevada, especially based on the questions that you're asking. And that you would not be asking these questions if you did not care. And I hope that you trust that we too would not be here to have these discussions with you if we did not care. We care deeply, and you've seen some emotion here today about how deeply we all care about our children and recognize that they are our future. So with that said, just a little bit about the Lyon County School District. So I gave you our current enrollment. We have over 9,174 students in the Lyon County School District. Unlike some of my surrounding districts, we continue to grow each year. In the Lyon County School District, we're growing at about 1% per year for about the last 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years. We have approximately 1,100 staff members. And I do want to qualify this and say that when I use the term educators, I am talking about all staff members. I'm not just talking about certified teachers, administrators. I am talking about all staff members, because our bus drivers, our custodians, our secretaries, every one of them are educators, and every one of them touches the lives of a kid every single day in our school district and in our state. And so 1,100 total educators, and of those, you can see that it's actually just under 600 are certified, and just over 500 are classified educators. And so in kind of orienting you to our graphs, I did want to provide you with the information as we ran the numbers through the new pupil-centered funding plan, and with the proposed infused $2 billion from the governor's budget. You are able to see on the left of each of those graphs, those remain the same for reference purposes. But on the right side, wanted to show you what it would look like with a 0, a 5, a 10, a 15, and a 20% increase if that were to go to all educators. And so of importance is to note that with the PERS increase alone, and we are also fortunate to know our insurance increase. And in the Lyon County School District, we do have a history of covering the insurance for our employees 100%. We view that as an important recruiting tool, and something that, again, we've heard comments about robbing Peter to pay Paul. We do our very best to make sure our employees are not paying out of pocket for that health insurance. So you can see that in the Lyon County School District, we are going to incur a substantial increase to our health insurance in the amount of $100 per month per employee for the first year. And then for the second year, it is even more than that. And so just to take note, before any cost of living or anything else, just to cover all that, we're looking at close to $9 million, as you can see on the bottom of that first slide. And then, of course, you can just orient yourself through the 5%, 10%, 15, and 20%, seeing that, of course, once we hit the 15, 20% area, we're very much in the hole. So just wanted to make that clear to everyone. And then moving on to the last two slides, talking about our areas of known priority and known concern. All areas of our staffing are obviously a huge concern for us. We want to be able to provide as much of an increase to our educators as possible. It's already been mentioned, the inflation, the record inflation that we're undergoing in our country and certainly in our state. We need to do our very best to keep as much in our people's, our employees' pockets as possible. And that would go for all of our families. And so with that, we have, though, identified a couple of hotspots just like everybody else. This is a national educator shortage, not just a Nevada issue. But certainly with our certified educators, our special educators, and when I say special services, I'm talking about more than just our special education teachers. I'm talking about our support services, like our school psychologists, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, speech therapists, so on and so forth. And then, like everybody else, we know that we've got a hot spot with our transportation, with our bus drivers. We too have had to get a little bit creative with how we provide that service, knowing that they are underpaid. And then also with some of our maintenance personnel, we do not have a one-to-one maintenance person at each of our school sites. We have some shared sites. And just for orientation, Lyon County School District has 18 total schools, 19 if you count our rehabilitation school that we share with Winrick. We call it Eagle Ridge, but we have turned it into a certified high school because we found that there were students who wanted to graduate from there instead of returning to their home school. We serve 5 separate and distinct communities that have schools in them, although we have even more communities. Our largest school is approximately 1,300 students. It's our high school in Fernley. And our smallest school, we're proud to say, is down in Smith Valley. It's a K-12 school serving about 200 students. And so we too have a bit of a diversity of our schools. So continuing through the presentation there, some of our known priorities are to increase or maintain our Grow Your Own program. We have a very successful Grow Your Own program that we've had even before the pandemic. I believe we're in our 5th year now. And that is where we take classified folks and we then pay for their schooling to become certified teachers, counselors, whatever certification they wish to receive. And we also have an excellent history of hiring 100% of those individuals into our school system upon completion, and we're very proud of that. But thus far, prior to the pandemic, we were able to use grant funding for that program. And then, of course, some of our SRARP funding is being used for that program right now. We too wish to decrease our EL caseloads. We are fortunate that right now we do have about depends on how you calculate it. Certified, it's 60 to 1, but once a person, the EL teacher reaches 30 people on their caseload, they receive an assistant or a parapro to assist them. And so we know that we wish to decrease those caseloads for our English learner instructors and staff. We also want to at least maintain, if not increase, our community health workers and our school resource officers. Again, prior to the pandemic, we were using grant funding, and we are now using SRARP funding for our community health workers and school resource officers. And then, of course, our one-to-one initiatives with our devices and Chromebooks. As you know, that became a necessity during the pandemic, and we too wish to maintain that as a priority. And as I mentioned before, we really want to take care of our educators, all of our staff, to make sure that we are not only recruiting but retaining them and giving them a livable wage so that they too can have a satisfying life and family. Just to note, all of our schools in Lyon County School District are designated Title I, so it's not such that we can shift some money more towards one school than another because we are all Title I. Although I will share with you that when it comes to staffing, we do have a bit of what I'll call more of a hot spot or a place that needs a little more tender care over in Silver Springs with their poverty levels. If you've never visited Silver Springs, it is certainly a unique place that does carry with it a great deal of poverty. And so when it comes to staffing, we do try and make sure we have a little bit lower ratios there. And then, of course, on the very last slide, you can see there how we've kind of outlined our estimated costs for those priorities or initiatives. And again, everything, as you've heard already, is subject to negotiations, so these are speculative at this point. But in order to increase our bus drivers to maybe a more competitive amount, that would be the cost there that you're seeing on the slide, with our maintenance positions, with our new EL positions. And then, of course, English language arts adoption for us, that we're up for that one this year. We just did our math adoption last year, and it was K through 8, and that cost us approximately $1.1 million. Knowing that English language arts is K to 12, we anticipate that costing a bit more. And then, of course, you can see those other ones funded through ESSER ARP, kind of giving you the breakdown of what those would be. And those are discussions that we'll have to have with our school board when the ESSER ARP funding runs out, and with our staff and community as to what those priorities are and what that looks like as we do our best to serve our students moving forward. Listed our graduation rates there. And then just to try and hit on some of the questions that have come. So regarding our restorative practices and such, we are proud to say that we have a very robust MTSS system that includes every one of our 18 schools, including our high schools, that are all have implemented PBIS system within it. And if you're not familiar with PBIS, it's Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. It deals a lot with restorative practices. How do we first teach the appropriate behavior and then address the behavior appropriately should that be maladaptive. And we have many of our schools that are now in tier 2 and 3. There's 3 tiers, like with everything. Apparently there's 3 tiers with everything. But a lot of our schools are in tier 2 and 3, with all of our schools at least implementing tier 1. And all of them have teams at their schools that monitor that data regularly, that discipline data regularly. I will also say that through negotiations and through our Board of Trustees, we have negotiated MTSS extra duty contracts for those teams at each of our schools to let them know that we take this very seriously and we want to make sure that we're serving our students as best we can. In regard to class sizes, we too are on the alternative plan. With the alternative plan, we keep our kindergarten classes, at 20. That's our threshold, not 25. So we try and keep them staffed at 20 to 1. And then, of course, grades 1, 2, and 3 at 22 to 1. And then grades 4, 5, and 6 upwards of 25 to 1. But we do try to keep them at 23, 24 to 1 as well. For our secondary schools, we do staff those at 25 to 1. However, since we have 5 high schools in our 5 separate communities, since they're smaller high schools, due to economy of scale, if you're going to have a fully functional high school with programs, you're naturally going to have smaller class sizes. So some of our smaller high schools actually have class sizes of approximately 18 to 1, and then our largest high schools are more like 24, 25 to 1, somewhere in that area. As far as our social workers and mental health, we are very blessed to work closely with our community partners, Healthy Communities Coalition of Lyon and Story counties. And we actually have monthly and quarterly meetings with them. And it's through them that we actually contract our social workers and what we call our resource coordinators, also called community health workers. And again, we've been blessed to have the grant funding. We have a very fantastic grants department that allows us to do this. And we've had them well before the pandemic. And we hope we hope to be able to secure more grant funding and continue to work with them to maintain our social workers. As mentioned before, mental health is a huge concern for everyone, not just with our students and families, but certainly with our staff, because our staff are families. Our staff they do have students. You know, we're all the same. We all have families and children, and we're all living in this world right now that's enduring a lot of calamity and a lot of crazy things. And so with that, our board doesn't know this yet, but in April, we too are going to be bringing forward a proposal for Care Solace. I don't know if you're very familiar with that. It's been mentioned a couple times today, but that's essentially a platform that allows you to connect with mental health providers, both in your area and through teletherapy. And so they're kind of that intermedium to make those connections. Because on average it takes upwards of 60 phone calls to find a mental health provider that is the right fit for you. And I personally know that firsthand with a couple of my family members' children going through that. And so with that said, that is a priority for us. I already mentioned our Grow Your Own program as a teacher pathway. We also have an outstanding Jumpstart program where we have approximately 125 students each year that participate in that program. And on average, we have about 30 to 35 of those students who receive their associate's degrees every single year for the past 7 years. And we're very proud of that. And for the last 2 years, we work with WNC, Western Nevada College, on that. And for the last 2 years, we have implemented education classes as part of the Jumpstart program in our county. And our philosophy on that is it's not to brainwash them into being educators, although that would be fantastic. We love them. But we figure that education classes are good for anything. They're good for leadership. They're good for parenting. They're just quality classes for our students to take. So that is also a pathway that we're working on. So how we've spent our ESSER and ARP funding, I will just share with you that ESSER 1 is 100% spent, ESSER 2 is 100% spent, and ESSER 3 ARP is 80% spent. And approximately 6% of it has gone to our facilities, 7% has gone to grant supports, 16% of it has gone to curricula, 17% has gone to technology supplies, so our Chromebooks, our hotspots, things like that. And about 55% of it has gone to our staff. And that's by way of after-school tutoring and summer school programming. To Senator Don Daraloop's point, we have a very robust summer school programming. And we actually take all of our educators, and we've used this ESSER ARP funding to be able to pay them at the highest rate on all of their salary scales during that summertime, for that exact reason that we've talked about, that it's difficult to find them and they're burnt out. And so that is, I think I've answered that. And then I believe it's Speaker Yeager. Your question basically is what are the priorities moving forward with the new funding? Without getting into negotiations, I'll first and foremost say flat out that we want to give as big an increase as possible to our educators. They deserve it more than we all know. And we love them. We know that we couldn't do this without them. We know that our students love them, and that if there was a program out there that we could buy that would give us the increases that we wanted, we would have all bought it by now. Education is about those relationships that are built with the educators, one-on-one with their students, and being able to help them realize who they are and achieve their own individual goals. And so, although we will spend some of that on curriculum and programming pieces, we recognize that if we don't have those excellent educators in there who are happy and healthy and giving their best every single day, it doesn't matter what program you put in front of a kid. So that I hope answers your question, Speaker Yeager. And with that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. You answered most of our questions during the presentation, but I believe Chair Don Darrell Loop has a comment or a question? No. Senator Neal, do you have one?
Yes, Madam Chair, just one. So all of your schools are Title I. So what's your federal allocation? How much federal money do you get for your schools?
For Title I, I would have to go, I would have to pull that number. I do not know exactly how much we get for Title I.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
I apologize. I can get that for you as soon as possible. I do know that it is through the Title I funding that we intend to pay for the Care Solace so that we can sustain that for the mental health of our students and staff.
Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. As you know, 5 generations of my family have gone to Smith Valley High School proudly, so it's important that we see some continuation. But I will tell you, the things that my constituents throughout Lyon County reached out to me about is the facilities, the poor condition of the facilities. And hearing that you spent 6% of those funds on facilities is a little disappointing, and just wondering about plans moving forward on capital improvement type of projects and where you are with that. Because it's truly, yes, lack of teachers, you have vacancies, yes, they want to be paid more. But when I hear from the folks having kids there, it's about the facilities themselves. And so I'm wondering where that is in the process.
Absolutely. Great question. And I do have my finance guy on text dial here. 1.5 million in Title I. And looks like if you can pass that along to Senator Neal when she gets back. But to address your question, Senator Titus, and thank you for asking that. Yes, we too have a facility master plan. And the great thing about a facility master plan is it tells you all the needs that you have. The difficult thing about the facility master plan is it doesn't give you the money that you need to address all those needs. And so with that said, yes, we do have plans for addressing those. As a matter of fact, our board over the last 6-7 months have had a number of facility improvements that have been improved, mostly in the HVAC system. That's where we were finding the hot spot, pun intended, back in November when we had the record heat up here north. And so our HVAC systems were kind of the glaring place where we needed that assistance. What I will share with you is that supply isn't keeping up with demand in regard to those capital improvement opportunities through bond funding. So with us, we are fortunate that we still do have capacity. What is hampering us, however, are the property tax abatements and caps. We estimate that over the last 10 years for each year, or excuse me, over the last 10 years, we have lost out on approximately $55 million in property tax that we could have otherwise used to pay down existing bond debt so that we could incur more bond debt to either build schools or make many of those capital improvements. And so, as I've mentioned before, although we love that as individual consumers in the state of Nevada, I love having a low property tax that I pay as an individual. It does have a substantial increase on school districts and on our ability to maintain and improve our facilities. So that didn't answer your question very well, but I can give you a breakdown of exactly what projects have been approved over the last 6 months, if you'd like that, Dr. Titus.
Great, thank you. And one more question, Madam Chair. So can you tell me, and thank you for that, I appreciate it, and would look at numbers, and I think all of us would, because it's different for each location, but problems remain the same. Vacancy rate in teachers?
Yeah, so if you look at our website now, you're going to see a huge list. But that's because we try and do our staffing formulas in March for the upcoming school year, and we get those posted in March. So everything that you see on our website, it's going to look like we have these unbelievable vacancies, but they are for the upcoming school year because we did just go through our staffing and we are increasing staffing because I mentioned that we are growing in population in many of our schools in Lyon County. What I will share with you is that each summer we have approximately 60 to 75 certified openings, anywhere from elementary teachers to secondary teachers to counselors to special educators. And as historically, over the last few years, as we have filled those, we have needed approximately 20-ish long-term subs in the place of those that could not be filled of the 60 to 75 that were vacant. And I believe there was a question earlier about what we're doing for special education staffing. The legislature passed a bill that requires us to have a plan for enhanced compensation. And we were very fortunate a number of years ago to negotiate with our union, our certified union, that they were good with us providing that enhanced compensation to our special educators. So our special educators receive an additional $3,000 a year when they meet certain targets as part of their employment with us. And so that's one way we're trying to address that specifically for special education.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or comments? Assemblyman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. So you mentioned the Care Solace program. I'm curious to know what, if you have an idea, or if you can provide for us what the cost of that program is going to be for you all, and just kind of give us a few more details on what it actually does.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I am ahead of my board a little bit because they still have to approve this in April. So understand that I'm saying all this knowing that we've had the presentations, but they have not, and it is not officially approved with us. So full transparency there. And no pressure either, but just a little from all of these people. So to answer your question, it costs, the rates that we were provided is that it costs us approximately $4 per student. And that $4 per student can decrease with multi-year contracts. And since we haven't signed one, then I can't necessarily provide that. But don't confuse it with them being a provider of mental health care. They are literally that intermediary that helps with that warm handoff. So there's a few different ways that it can happen. Number one, they provide a platform that all of our students and staff can access if they want to keep this private. Like if I'm a teacher and I don't want anybody to know that I'm looking for mental health resources, I can go to this website and I can type in all my information, location, where I'm at, am I good with teletherapy, in person, whatever those search tools would be. And then it can provide me with those providers locally who I can call. It will also tell me, do they accept my insurance, so on and so forth. Am I doing this completely out of pocket? Are they Medicaid eligible, blah, blah, blah. So that's one way it can happen. The other way it can happen that we believe will be most beneficial to our students is that we can designate at each school site we'll call them care providers or care contacts. So that might be our social workers, it might be our counselors, it might be our administrators. And when they are working with a student or they receive a referral from a teacher of a student who's maybe struggling, they can then contact the parents, get that permission, and they can actually enter them into the system the system then assigns the family to an actual person who is their care provider. So it's like a warm handoff to this person at Care Solace, who is the care provider that's going to take them through the entire referral process, including follow-up from when they get the appointment, help them get the appointment, when they get the appointment. After they have the appointment, they follow up and say, did it work? Was that a good match? Do we need to find somebody else? So on and so forth. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Clark County is already using it, so they might be better able to speak to it than I am, and a couple of other districts, I believe, like Humboldt is. But that's my conceptual understanding of it, not having seen it firsthand because we don't have it implemented yet in our district.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get a little more understanding of that and the cost that it was looking like for your district. As we have heard through all of the presentations, how severe the mental health problems are, not just for our students, but also for our staff and our teachers, our educators, and the entire system. So I'm going to put this out to all of the districts. If you can potentially send into this committee what you are doing, what you're spending right now on mental health, and what you would like to spend on mental health, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I, if I may also add, all of our school districts, well, I should say at least the rural school districts, I'm not sure about Washoe and Clark, but we're members of Pool Pact. And by virtue of being members of Pool Pact and paying for that insurance provider, they also provide an employee assistance program. And all of our employees can receive up to, I believe it's 3 free mental health counseling services during that time. And then our goal is to connect them with Care Solace then, so that can be continued using our insurance provider as the one who's able to help pay for that. But thank you. That's a great point.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, I will thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
We're into the M's. We're getting close, folks. So next up, we have Mineral County. Good afternoon. It's not quite evening yet, thank goodness.
Getting close.
Getting close.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Kiwi. I am the recently appointed superintendent for Mineral County School District. With me, I have brought teacher leader, instructional leadership team member, as well as learning strategist at Hawthorne Elementary School in Mineral County School District. Do you have a copy of the presentation? I apologize for submitting it late. In the rurals, as you've heard, we lack people. So I was running. So I am the recently appointed superintendent for Mineral County School District. I am unique to this position as I was born and raised in Mineral County, and I am a product of Mineral County School District myself. I have been in education in Mineral County for 21 years. I spent 7 years as a teacher at Hawthorne Elementary School, teaching 3rd and 5th grade. I then became the principal at Hawthorne Elementary School. I am finishing out my 13th year now, and then now also taking on the superintendent role. I believe that part of the problem in Mineral County is the significant turnover rate that we've had in administration, but we'll get to that in my presentation. So if you see the cover sheet, we do own that photo. That is our beautiful lake, Walker Lake. Most of you have probably driven by it on the way from Reno to Vegas. That's what we're known for. So in our presentation, you will see that I will say for the per pupil center funding, Mineral County was not a loser in that change. We actually came out all right on that. But previous to the per pupil center funding, Mineral County was significantly underfunded. And once COVID hit and the funding system changed, it did have a huge impact on Mineral County. For example, Mineral County was not able to provide instruction to our students when we moved to distance learning. As we did not have devices, we had no technology due to the lack of funding. We were not a 1-to-1. We were not even a 5-to-1 or a 10-to-1. So that had a dramatic impact. When you look at the funding sheets in front of you, you will see that Mineral County will take an increase, of course, with the funding for '24. We would be looking at $1,681,252 in fiscal year '24. In fiscal year '25, we would be looking at an increase of $439,807. What you also have your next slides, thanks to the wonderful support of the other superintendents across the state. Thank you all for your assistance. You will see the first slide is a 2%. What would that look like in Mineral County? You can see at the top, we would have an increase of $272,868 for PERS alone. We took a 7% increase this year for our health insurance, and historically, we would take about a 4% for the following year. So if you just take a minute to look over that, if we gave a 2%, that would also include the already negotiated 2%. So that would actually be a 4%. That would not have a negative impact on us in any way. Jumping to the 10%, which is our next slide, you will see that that is where it begins to have an impact on Mineral County, and it would have a significant impact on the amount of funds that actually reach students if we gave all staff across the district a 10% raise. Now, this, again, in Mineral County, we have our negotiated agreements that we have to live by. We would need to take this to the table. One of the things in Mineral County is that we do believe all educators are all equal. So when one collective bargaining unit gets a raise, we all get it. So that's our bus drivers, our parapros, our teachers. We understand that we cannot run our schools without those vital people. So if we attempted to go with the NSEA 20 for 20, we would quickly drop. So the next slide would be the 20% increase. And you can see in 2024, we would actually go into the negative, and that would only be in salaries alone. So that would be the fiscal impact. As you look at the next slide, you'll see the district priorities at this time. Mineral County, as I said, is unique. In the 20 years that I've been there, we have had 10 superintendents. As a principal for 13 years, I have worked with 6 CFOs and 9 other principals. Consistent leadership has had a huge impact on Mineral County School District as a whole. I do believe that is why the school board has decided to appoint from within, as I know the history and the challenges of Mineral County, being that I was born and raised there. So you'll see our top priority is recruiting and retaining our educators, and that includes teachers, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, by offering a competitive, livable wage to fill our vacancies and to reduce teachers, educators from leaving Mineral County and the profession. Our starting teacher salary is $39,813. We do pay all of our teachers and all of our employees our full health benefits as well as PERS. The drawback for our teachers and our parapros is we do not provide health insurance for their families. So we've lost a lot of young educators because they could not afford to put their family members on our insurance plan. We have 41 teachers in Mineral County School District. And as you can see on the previous slide, we have 577 students. We have 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school, and 1 adult education school. Our paraprofessionals currently make $14.97 an hour. They only work 30 hours a week for 9 months out of the school year. This is not a competitive wage. In fact, we just lost one of our special education ELL parapros to a job that pays more. That will have a huge impact. She's one of our only paraprofessionals who speaks Spanish and was able to support our students. We have 5 long-term substitute teachers in Mineral County School District right now. And to my knowledge, we are one of the only districts who are currently using a J1 visa teacher program. I know you have another bill in front of you, AB 308. The impact of that bill could greatly have an impact on Mineral County School District, as we do have 8 J1 visa teachers who are obtaining their U.S. credentials. Most of those are just a few classes to maintain an equivalency as a U.S. fully certified teacher. These teachers join us, and they can stay here for up to 5 years. Our special education parapros receive an additional 50 cents per hour, but I must tell you, all of our parapros work with special education students. Although we hire parapros or we have open parapro positions who would theoretically help us with art, PE, computers, music, STEAM, we haven't been able to do that because the special education needs of our students are so high. We are also struggling greatly to recruit and retain bus drivers. Bus drivers have to do the same thing that I told all of my first year teachers never to do. Don't turn your backs on the students. When you're driving that bus and you're driving around Walker Lake and the students' behaviors are out of control, that's hard to keep somebody in that position. We also are struggling with our kitchen aides. They make $12.97 an hour starting. One of our next priorities is to develop an MCSD Grow Your Own program. This would be modeled off what Lyon County has done in the past. And we are currently working with UNLV to learn more about the paraprofessional program that is funded through NV Epic. And we are also using their AARL program, which allows interested educators who have bachelor's degrees in any areas to fast track with the funding of NV Epic to obtain their teacher certification within 1 year. So we have some of our long-term subs who are currently enrolled in that. We're also going to be utilizing our AB 495 funds to reimburse educators for their classes, for their praxis exams, for their national board certifications, in which we have 7 teachers who are currently working on obtaining their national board certifications, and developing our paraprofessionals as they continue to increase their education to hopefully become teachers for Mineral County School District. The next thing that we're working on is increasing and retaining our safe schools professionals. Those would be our mental health workers. Right now we have social workers and community health workers. We pay them on a contractor basis because, quite honestly, it's cheaper as a contractor to pay them. And we are utilizing our ESSER funds as well as AB 495 grants. We also utilize those funds to pay our elementary school counselor. The next district priorities for us in Mineral County, due to the high turnover rate in leadership, we are just now beginning to develop a district-wide teacher mentoring program. How do you retain teachers? You provide them with the mentor support that they truly need. You provide them with the in-classroom coaching and the support to get through those challenging days. We also are looking at finalizing our district strategic plan, which is brand new. We're just starting it. We're really excited about the process. And as you know, that's really the first step to bringing the district together. The next step is to strengthen and improve the culture and climate for students and staff in Mineral County. When the staff feel safe and they feel valued, they are able to provide an education in which the students also feel safe and valued. We are just now beginning our work on the Portrait of a Learner. We're really excited about that, and I'd like to thank NDE for valuing our educators' time. For the teachers who are participating in the Portrait of a Learner, they are actually receiving a stipend to do the work. They're not being expected to do it for free, which has been the history in Nevada. To increase the mental health supports for our students and our families, because as it's been discussed previously, it's not just our students, it's our families as well. If we really want to fully bring in these social workers into our campuses and have them there as full-time employees, it's going to cost the district, we would need an additional $984,000 to keep our 4 safe schools professionals, 2 counselors, and a school psychologist. We are also in the beginning stages of developing a district-wide curriculum. Right now, our sites are doing individual things, and you'll see some things great and some things are struggling. If you look at the Nevada report card, you will see that the scores range site by site, and that is because we do not have a district-wide adopted curriculum. I am proud to say that one of our schools pre-COVID was one of 3 schools in the entire state of Nevada who jumped from a 1-star, and I don't say jumped, they climbed. They climbed from a 1-star school to a 4-star school in 1 year. How did they do that? It was they had a strong team which we had been building up for years. They gave their blood, sweat, and tears. It wasn't because they were getting paid more. They did it because they had true relationships with their students. They had a strong leadership team, and they saw the value and support of collaboration and planning together. COVID hit, and unfortunately, that changed everything for our students and our staff. Due to COVID, our elementary schools in Mineral County were not able to provide full-day in-person instruction due to social distancing. That had a dramatic impact negatively on our students, and we were only able to provide them support through packets. I don't know about you, but if I read something and I'm not talking about it with somebody else, I'm not learning it. So our students at the elementary level in Mineral County, they lost from March to the next August. And then when we were able to bring them back, it was half day. The other half day was spent on computers because we were able to obtain funding for one-to-one Chromebooks. Unfortunately, what we found was the time they were supposed to be on distance learning, they were not. In fact, most of them were on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and that created more work for our Safe Schools professionals as they had to track down our students to see what they were doing instead of learning. And that is the impact that we are now seeing in our classrooms. Our students are struggling greatly to pay attention. They're struggling greatly to regulate themselves. How do they regulate their emotions? Do they have the self-awareness, the problem-solving skills? We're really looking at making sure that all of our students have the CASEL skills that they will need to develop as humans to be productive members in society. What are those skills, you may ask? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. These are the things that our students really need to have and develop, and our social workers, as well as our highly trained staff, are the people who are going to help them to obtain those skills. We have, what did I tell you, 577 students. We have 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school, 1 adult education program. We have 97 employees, 46 certified, 1 district nurse, 47 classified staff members, and 4 confidential staff. We have Nevada Ready Pre-K, which provides education for our preschoolers, 39 of our preschoolers. We are very fortunate to have a Nevada Ready Pre-K grant that makes sure that all students in Mineral County who are 4 years old have that crucial early childhood classes, development. Those are the primary years where they're developing social emotional skills that they greatly need. So as legislators, I highly encourage you to look at that. What can we do to make sure that all preschoolers across the state can have that jump start with fully funded preschool? We transport our students, 134 students daily. Some of them travel 30 miles on the bus. They get up at 6:30 and they get up and jump on the bus at 6:30 in the morning. They arrive home at 5 o'clock. It's a long, long day for an elementary kid. I apologize. I was trying to jot down notes as we're moving along. Restorative practices, that was one of the questions. We, in Mineral County School District, our administrative staff did receive training in restorative practices. Unfortunately, what I've discovered is under the different leadership, not all of the sites had the same level of training. So the elementary teachers typically received more training in restorative justice or restorative discipline than the secondary staff. The elementary staffs also received training on trauma and what trauma brings to education. Because please know there's a lot more with restorative practices. If you don't understand trauma, restorative practices, I'm just going to say, is kind of a pretty name. You have to understand the trauma that these students are bringing to school with them. Why is a 7-year-old throwing a chair across the classroom and evacuating the class? That's not 10 minutes of lost instructional time in second grade. That's an hour. What does that trauma that student's bringing to class with them have on all of the other kids in that class? Because they've never seen that. And how do we help support them? That's those safe schools professionals. That's making sure that all of our staff across the district are fully trained in trauma-informed education as well as restorative practices. But we also have to have an understanding of what that restorative justice looks like for our administrators. Anytime a child has a meltdown such as that or reaches a level of restorative justice that has to go to the principal, we are now writing a 1 to 4 page plan for those students. And unfortunately, a lot of schools do not have the resources to enforce those plans. So it becomes a pretty plan that's typed up and put in the folder until the next time. So I do think there's room for improvement, but especially in training for the secondary level. Our administrators' starting salaries, I'm going to be honest with you, for our administrators, I have this conversation with my school board. I don't know why anyone would want to be a principal in Mineral County School District. High-end teachers who have actually made it to 20 years and have a master's plus make more than our starting administrators. They work 158 days or 182 days, where your administrators work 210 days. They have the fiscal reporting, all of the reports, the bullying reports, the restorative justice plans. To be honest, the family counseling, the things that come in our front door that we have to help regulate our parents so that they understand why Johnny was removed from class today. Our graduation rate is not pretty. There's a number of factors that play into that. Our graduation rate, unfortunately, brought down the entire district, or the entire state, if I must say, and it is 65.71. One of the things that we found in Mineral County is that moving students to adult ed is definitely not a way to help them graduate. We anticipate we'll have a graduation rate this year of 82%, so that is an increase. One of the next things that you'll see in our district plan, we are really working to expand utilizing AB 495 funds. our CTE offerings at the junior high and high school. We have been lacking CTE completers because we do not have the programs available to them. So we are utilizing those funds to start bringing more opportunities to our junior high, high school students, because we truly do understand that not all students will be college bound. We want to put into place programs that prepare our students to be survivors in this world, whatever profession that they choose. We're also looking at building opportunities for our elementary students. Elementary students cannot just sit in a room. One of the presenters said, it's time for a brain break. Well, we should have had at least 20 of those. You gotta stretch, you gotta move, and if you're an elementary kid, put them in a STEAM room and let's see what they can build, because they can build some amazing things. I'm embarrassed to say that in Mineral County School District, we are behind the times in our curriculum adoption. Those are things that we are working on now, and we're utilizing some of our ESSER funds and our AB 490 funds to make sure that those things happen. We are recently hiring a curriculum and development a curriculum and instruction administrator to help make sure that our curriculum is aligned pre-K-12 and that we get the best programs for our students, because our students are different than students in some of the wealthier counties. In case you didn't know, we're the 4th smallest. All right. If there are questions I did not answer, pre-COVID, ESSER. How did we spend our ESSER funds? We spent our ESSER funds on a school counselor. We spent our ESSER funds on web cameras so that our teachers could actually do the online instruction with our students. We also spent it on new computers for our teachers so that they could effectively hold video teaching, and Chromebooks for all of our students. So the elementary schools in Mineral County School District are now 1-to-1. We also purchased programs such as Fast Forward, Teach Town, iExcel, and a science one that I'm drawing the blank on the name of. Why? Because they were online programs, and at that time, that's what we had to offer. When we had the kids in person is when we were doing our interventions, doing our enrichment, and trying to close the achievement gap. With our ESSER 2 funds, we again continued to fund our school counselor. We funded an interim principal to assist with discipline. We hired a special education teacher because our special education numbers were growing. We hired a traumatologist to come out and work with our staff and help educate them in the beginning stages of trauma and how that impacts students' abilities to learn. We also use that traumatologist to have community nights with our parents so that they would understand what trauma looks like in families, in homes, and how it impacts our students. We further used our ESSER funds to increase our dual enrollment opportunities for our junior high and high school students, and we purchased textbooks and paid tuition for those dual enrollment classes. Our ESSER 3 funds we utilized for essential workers bonuses, professional development, Safe Schools professionals. All of our Safe Schools professionals or social workers are paid for out of a grant, and those are the ESSER grants. And we also created a Serpent Student Union for our students to enroll in, so that now when they return, they're able to take their dual enrollment classes during the regular school day in their own environment. And we are now offering more classes through Edgenuity online, so that if students already had Algebra 1, they can continue to elevate their education. We further utilized it for tutoring and summer school, and we already have funding for this year and next year for our funding for summer school as well. The challenge again will be getting our staff to go ahead and, be able to hold those summer school sessions as they are drained. So Any questions?
Thank you. I think you covered almost all of them, but I just want to say, you listed a lot of things that you did with your ESSER money. You had answered a lot of the questions that you had heard members ask earlier today. When you get an opportunity, could you please just type that up and send it to us?
Yes.
And you did amazing things with your ESSER dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also.
We have a few questions. I know Senator Titus and I believe Assemblywoman Bacchus has questions. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much. I appreciate that you are homegrown, stuck there, and willing to recognize with all those changes, perhaps a better way for your county. I have a couple specific questions, however. What are their confidential staff?
The confidential staff are the district office staff. You'll find in a lot of the larger districts, their district office staff are typically administrators. That's why you have a lot of the wonderful superintendents behind me who were CFOs and they were HR, not in mineral. Those positions are held by people who are not educators.
Okay, thank you. Another question, if I might, Madam Chair. Along the same line of questioning, in my 6 different counties I represent, again, the tribal nations and schools. In Mineral County, you have SHRS.
Yes.
And I know that the high school students there go to, some of them do, have an option to go to Yarrington, I believe, and some may go to Fountain, and some may go to Hawthorne. How's all working? Could you explain if you're reimbursed by the counties and what that decision looks like?
So we have about 18 students who attend Lyon County School District for high school. The way that the law is written, if they live on tribal land and we do not offer a high school in their community, they can go to the nearest high school, which is Lyon County. So some go to Lyon County, there's about 18, and then the rest come into Hawthorne.
And one more question, if I might, Madam Chair. I know it's late and everybody wants to get out of here, but the 800 prison education program that you have here.
That was the one that I don't have that. That's Russell's.
Okay, I thought maybe I was confused because I thought that it was in a different county, but.
Oh yeah, so on this one that has all my notes as you guys were talking, transported, everything under the 134 can just be crossed out.
All right.
My bad. We do not have a prison education program, so I apologize. That's Russell. He'll talk about that in a minute. He was helping me out by being a buddy, and we also do not have a potential loss for the SPED on the next page. So you can just cross that out too, and I apologize for that.
I thought I knew my district pretty well, but I was really surprised at that one.
You do. In the rush to try to get this after I got the call that I was late, I rushed. So I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Bacchus?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My question kind of just, you had indicated with respect, well, let me, first one comment. I also was interested in the SHRS Elementary School, which is in Mineral County. And I had questions, but now throughout the day, I've kind of learned capital improvements and facility maintenance issues are just a struggle across the county.
They are.
And so thank you for confirming that.
Yes.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is you were talking about doing a curriculum across the district. And I was looking and it looked like there was one high school, one middle school, but then there was 2 elementary schools. And it seems like obviously there's the Hawthorne Elementary School and then SHRS.
Yes.
But out of concern, obviously, and I understand the SHRS is pretty much, it's within the reservation. So it's pretty much a tribal elementary school that is a Nevada State school. And I just want to make sure that that common curriculum wasn't just going to evade any tribal customs that may also be included in at that school?
No, that's a great question. And just to specifically speak to SHRS Elementary School, they have 71 students. They have 1 full-time principal. They have 5 teachers and 4 paraprofessionals. So the capital improvement, as you stated, that is an issue across our district right now, and we're prioritizing projects. So we are prioritizing them for the whole district, And when it comes to SES or Schurz Elementary, they do have different professional development, but one of my goals as the superintendent is to bring all of our schools together as one district and then build the cultural training that Schurz is providing their staff and students across the district. Because ultimately, we want to keep our Schurz Elementary School or our Schurz Elementary high schoolers away from Lyon County, no offense, Wayne, but to keep them in Mineral County. And to do that, we have to recognize their culture. So although we want to do a curriculum, district-wide curriculum, that would be on some of our basic foundational skills in English language arts, as well as mathematics. But how we build in cultural, we're looking at utilizing their at-risk funds and their EL funds, because they actually obtain more EL funds because they also speak NUMA. So knowing that, those funds would be specifically allocated out through the per pupil center funding so that Schurz Elementary can continue to grow their own cultural programs. So I hope that answers your question. You're welcome.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, you did a good job.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity for the superintendents to all speak. I really do think that although it's the first time I believe it's ever been done, I hope that you were all able to really gather just the differences. And that each of us, although we're all superintendents and we all are educators, the challenges that we face, although similar, are also different. So thank you so much. And if I could just close with saying, please remember, schools can't become the best places for students to learn and grow unless we make them the best places for teachers to work and grow. So thank you.
Thank you. What a great ending comment. All right. Moving on to Persian. He's here at the table because he's ready to go home. Good afternoon. Whenever you're ready to start, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Russell Fecht for the record, Superintendent of Pershing County. You all look a lot different than last session when I was NAST president and got to sit on Zoom to testify for any of the different things we were requested of, so it's nice to be here in person. Stephanie, thank you for taking part of my thunder there. Appreciate it. Pershing County School District, one of the smaller school districts. I've had a couple people come out and visit, and I always say that once you leave Lyon or a Churchill and you start to get out to us, you start to enter the frontier of the state. We have 4 schools, 2 elementary schools, both Title I. They're 45 miles apart. They share an administrative staff. So the principal travels out to provide support. Counseling goes out. We bus food service back and forth. We have a middle school, which is also a Title I school, and 1 high school. We employ approximately 116 full-time employees, 65 certified. That's including our administrative staff that has 1 admin at each building, 51 classified. We share 1 school nurse throughout the district, and of note of special interest for Senator Neal, who stepped out, was we have 1 ELL position throughout the K-12 environment. 682 students currently spread out between the 3 levels, 349 pre-K through 5th, broken down 332 within Lovelock Elementary School and 17 in the rural school of Emily that I referenced earlier. It houses 1 teacher and 1 aide, and they do it all out there. So K-5 in that building. 153 in 6th through 8th, and currently at 180 kids within our comprehensive high school.
Of note and of special interest, well, I guess percentage-wise, to break down a little bit, 18% of our student body is currently receiving special education services. Maybe I can multitask and keep this up to date too. 6% receive ELL. 33% Hispanic population, roughly 7% Native. Everything else is broken down into the other categories. Primarily Caucasian would be our majority. Of note, we also transport 155 students who live in the Grass Valley area, which is basically connected to Winnemucca. If you were to go out there, you wouldn't realize that you crossed the county line from Humboldt to Pershing. Pershing County buses those students every day into schools within Humboldt County. They receive the entire proportionment that comes for the student allocation. And so we cover the cost for busing as well as a small fee for them to take our students. So I forget the exact amount. It's a couple $100 per kid. And the intent of that at one point was to help offset local revenue base that we would receive in taxes that they wouldn't get, since all the money that goes into one pot and then gets spread out, as we talked about it. It's a nominal fee for them to process those students back and forth. So our large expense for accommodating those 155 students is truly within the busing aspect. We do offer a prison education program out at the medium security prison located at Coal Canyon exit when you're traveling I-80. We educate roughly 800 completers. So we may serve more than 1,000 inmates in any given year, but we're averaging around 800 completers a year of different programs out there. And I'm not an expert in that field. We do have an administrator that oversees the prison education program out there, and currently four teachers and an aide. And of special interest, the 20 plus, we're around 24 youthful offenders right now. Those would be offenders placed in a medium security prison that are under the age of 18. So it is a high school program that leads to high school proficiency equivalency out there. Unique, it's always interesting to visit. Since COVID, we haven't, they've really limited who can be out into the environment, so I haven't been out there in the last 2 years. But 8 years ago, when I started as superintendent of schools in Pershing, it was a really interesting experience to go out and visit. Negotiated starting salaries for Pershing County teachers, $45,000 for next year. Instructional aides $1,683, custodians $1,530, bus drivers $1,581, and our mechanics are $17.31. And as you've heard from all the previous things, it still is a tremendous challenge for us, and I'll get into some of that. Our mission statement has recently changed, and I think we were one of the first, I know we were one of the first within the state to specifically identify social and emotional needs of our students within our mission. And as we go into some of the highlights of our district, you'll hear me speak a little bit more about that, but it's there for you. You know, you mentioned, Stephanie mentioned that she was born and raised in Mineral, and you're going to hear that because I know Adam's coming up from behind me. I was born and raised in Pershing, went through the school system, have taught there, administrator there, and now in my 8th year as superintendent. The schools are the heart and soul of our small rural community. We have an award-winning multi-tiered system of support. 8 years ago, we tackled within my first year as superintendent was Project Aware money that was afforded to different districts in Nevada. We took full advantage of that. It was a 5-year program. it has long gone away. However, our system was something that we built that we managed to keep in place, and some of that has been through the use of different ESSER dollars, which I'll review in just a little bit. We have a dedicated and highly educated staff. Although we've experienced tremendous turnover, we've managed to keep approximately 62.3% of our teachers right now have a master's degree or higher. That brings our average salary for a teacher in our district to just shy of $70,000. It's $69,092. We've maintained strong graduation rates throughout the years. You'll see we've been in the top portion of the state. We did have 1 year there at 100% that's on the chart within the last 5 years, but you'll see 96 or 94% graduation rates. We like to say that we have unique learning opportunities. Sometimes with small size, we get to have different ones than a lot of our counterparts. Small class sizes, we believe we know our students. And when I say we know our students, we know what weakness, we know their strengths, we know their family lives, we know their aunts, their uncles. We have a lot of families that we serve that have been long-standing community members, lots of family history. Although we do have transiency rates and we do have those people that come and go, our size affords us the opportunity to kind of be able to stay on top of them. A lot different than our large systems. That would be one really strong advantage to a small system. CTE, career education opportunities. Pershing County High School, we oversee a 14-acre school farm. They operate it. All revenue generated from that supports their ag education program. The district pays the water rights, and the instructor, everything else stays within that program. We are one of only a couple districts that own and operate our own TV studio. It's channel KPHS. It used to be known as channel K14KQ, but due to some different regulations, we had to change the call sign here a few months ago. When I say that we own and operate, it's a low-powered TV station. So if you bring up Northern Nevada, part of the reason why Elko County lost Channel 4 not too long ago, within the last 2 years since COVID hit, coverages there was dealing with some of the regs that had went through on low-powered TV station. We actually are at the hub of the transmission line and control those rights that can go out and cover most of Northern Nevada. And if you were to listen, as some of you probably have, because I know she's been through, but our director of that TV station has given presentations about trying to get a Northern Nevada TV studio in place, and the hub of that would be there in Pershing County School District. Our business program is new. It's one of the competitive CTE grants. They manufacture the different goods now and help oversee a recently started school store enterprise. The PAYS Lab opportunity, we've been tying the work-based learning program into that. And then a program most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with, used to be known as JAG Nevada, which is Jobs for Nevada Graduates, is within our high school. We have middle school robotics and Lego programs, as well as some unique programming that we do within our elementary school for different drama productions. They just had their big show. And one thing that we like to highlight, and I know for those that got to hear me speak at the last session, was we're really proud that we're one of just a few districts that was able to maintain in-person learning during COVID. We didn't lose a grade level. I know that there's a couple that managed to stay pretty much open and they had to lose a grade level or a classroom or something along the way. We didn't. Besides the initial shutdown that took place from March to July or so in 2020, we managed to open fully the next year and keep in-person instruction. And that was by setting a lot of different political and personal feelings to the side as a community and as a staff. And so that's why that continues to be on there, is to really show what it took to be able to do that. Sorry, my presentation fell behind. Don't I have somebody there? So we talk about planning, where we're at, a lot about the accountability that we're all under. Just like my counterparts, there's a lot of things that are just now starting in conversation. We're at a point in the budgeting process where April 12th is my first budget workshop within our community. Right now it's sitting at the administrative level, staff level to talk about what our needs and desires are. And then we'll start that budget process. And we're very used to this because we're usually not getting a budget even shown to us till the first part of June, coming out of you in a legislative year. And so for us to be asked to come in and be prepared to present about where we're going to spend this money, we haven't even started the entire process that we've been built on based on a timeline that's been set by reg. And so that's a challenge for us to be able to come. Now within that comes that we have planning, we have discussion points all throughout. And these are some of those things. First and foremost is, you heard today, we're adjusting to a new pupil-centered funding formula that none of us have the answers to. In a slide that you'll see coming up when I dive into the numbers, Pershing's facing a potential loss in state SPED funding of 84%. That could be because of a clerical mistake or the not knowing of how we identify when we have something that should stay within a SPED expenditure but was being covered out of the general fund, something that we normally in the old plan we'd transfer from general fund to cover the special ed costs, didn't occur in this side because, as you've heard, small districts don't have near the brain trust working for them. We have many hats. So that hit to our district could be very, very significant. And it's not because those costs weren't there. It's just because the transfer takes place differently in one model compared to this one. Staffing and recruitment, number one on everybody's list that you've heard from. Significant turnover in the past few years. We used to never have an issue filling positions. This last year, we ended up not having 2 elementary education positions not filled, a psychologist position not filled, a test director position not filled. We ended up we haven't had a music position within our district since prior to COVID. And it's not from a lack of trying or wanting or budgeting for it or anything else. It's just strictly being able to recruit staff. We have lack of qualified applicants in all areas, which has led us to use critical needs designation for all positions. We've been putting that on every time that we can post and try to recruit. Our success in that area, we led to hiring our first 2 critical needs people that came back to us that had been retired. We managed to convince them to stay on for a year, and those jobs are now posted. We want to provide a competitive wage and benefit package. We'd like to entertain an accountability testing director, some position that we used to have in our district and we've been unable to fill. The assistant principal, with the increased behaviors and demands that we've been seeing, we have a significant need at the elementary level. And so in some of our conversations is about tying the accountability testing with a assistant principal for the first time in our district. I mentioned district-wide music, sustainability of programs when ARP ESSER runs out. We have no one-to-one device replacement plan at this point. It was put out there on the backs of ESSER, and in a small district, that's a significant cost to take on. MTSS mental health services, the social worker coordinator, as well as contracted services for Tier 3 mental health support. I'll discuss a little bit more when I get to the ESSER side. Curriculum needs, we've been looking at the ELA curriculum, common curriculum, K-5. We know we need to upgrade that. Adoption of a new ELL curriculum, as well as exploring the expansion of different dual credit opportunities. We have aging facilities with limited funding options for replacement. As you've heard, and some of you have pointed out, the lack of capital funding that exists in our state is problematic. Our administrative building, where my office is, was built in 1941 and used to be the ag shop. It's been remodeled since then so that we can function, but still it wasn't built since 1941. Our high school built in 1950, the middle school in 1953, elementary school in Emily was 1960, and our newest school was built in 1993, which was at the same time that we were fortunate enough to add the current agriculture building as well as an automotive shop. The increased cost to operate, on the next slide when I get into this, our insurance cost increase, both employee level as well as district. I know Dr. Jensen mentioned about not being able to project what the pool pack type increase. We've been seeing significant increases across the board over the last few years of what those liability insurances for school districts are. We haven't seen the preliminary figures yet for that. Our preliminary increase for insurance for employees is 56%. $380 some odd an employee. Now, that is a significant initial renewal for us, which will send us to having to go to bid for the first time in 8 years. I have never switched insurance carriers since my superintendency has began, and we were fortunate enough to receive flat rate renewals from our insurance for the last 6 years. One of the reasons for that was because we had such a high retiree group go through, a veteran staff, and the changeover hit us at the right time that we were able to bring younger staff on. But as they start to have babies and then you start to have families and you start the cycle all over, we've been hit with an increase over the last year that of costs within our insurance pool. And in a small district, it doesn't take too many, but when you have 4 or 5 of those types of things, a knee replacement, a cancer, a this and that, all of a sudden your cost ratio starts to climb to claims. Anyway, I could bore you with some of that. I'm living that right now, but significant increase there. Transportation, you've heard about if you can get your hands on them, they're about 18 months out when you order buses. In 2022, we started replacing buses. The cost was $147,977. My last bus that I just purchased is $183,931 and just got notice that we're not supposed to receive it until next September. We've had it on order for almost 6 months. Parts, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but as a couple examples, an alternator for one of our new buses that went out last January was $750. It's up to $1,700 last month, 2 months ago. Fuel. We know fuel hasn't gone down. In 2020, Pershing County School District spent $44,000 in fuel, just diesel type 2 fuel. In 2022, we spent $90,000. Utilities, electrical and natural gas have also risen like that, as well as just overall inflation. So the question starts to come about what's it look like for this windfall of money. And I have a negotiated agreement in place for all of our groups next year, so I know that our 2% is what we've negotiated. I've also negotiated in that I'd already cover the insurance increase. So put that in perspective, that I know what my costs are going into with the PERS increase and the insurance. If I take on the PERS, entirety of the PERS increase, which as you hear today, if you don't, you can't maintain your competitiveness for employees. I'm on the hook for a cost increase with just those items for $1,172,800. My windfall coming from the state is $1,143,576. That means I already know that for next year I'm deficit spending $29,226. just to maintain status quo with the current employee group that I have. If you roll that forward, I noticed that I didn't quite get the FY24 off when I copied the thing down. The next one is the FY25 cost with a 0% cost of living increase. Going back to what a historical insurance increase would be, and you roll that through, and the bottom piece should be FY25 cost increase being $693,994 with a proposed revenue increase in the governor's budget of $470,000 $373, which means just for me to continue to operate without a cost of living in FY25 puts Pershing County School District in deficit spending of $223,621. For the total biennium, projected cost increase with a 2% cost of living is almost 1.9 million. Proposed revenue 1.6. Deficit expenditures of 252,846. And if you want to see just how that grows, 10% deficit spending over the biennium of 1.2 million. And if you roll forward to the demanding letter sent by Senator Dennis on October 25th of 22, without counting the $20 increase for hourly employees, but only dealing with the certified staff at the 20% increase, takes me to a deficit expenditure of $2.4 million. To try and answer a few of the questions, it seems like ESSER was a big topic about how we all identified to spend our money. I mentioned about our MTSS program being near and dear to Pershing County School District. And one of the reasons that we've been able to lead the state and be able to present to numerous of our counterparts about what we have in a system is due to these types of funding. ESSER 1, we received $121,000. It's spent fully. It went to an MTS coordinator, cleaning supplies, a few computers, and PPE odds and ends. ESSER 2 that came through was $480,000 for our school district. It is also 100% spent. We ended up doing a COVID bonus, a one-time bonus for our staff, for everybody that was on there. And the reason we justified that was not because of a retention, but because, as I mentioned, we were 100% in-person instruction, and we were able to set aside those beliefs and those political things that were going on out there that we all lived, and they stepped up to the plate, and we were able to reward them with a small stipend. We also helped provide and go from a partial nurse to a full-time nurse in our district. We provided edgenuity for those that chose to stay online learning or to provide summer school as credit recovery. So edgenuity program was the vendor that we used, a number of our districts used to be able to provide those. We put a 5th grade teacher in. Our test scores, some of our performance and class size was such the only way we could operate and meet the social distancing requirements that were set forth upon us was I need another 5th grade teacher, and I was able to do that with these funds. Laptops and Chromebooks, as well as one-screen boards within the classrooms, take us to a one-to-one district where we weren't, and we could put an actual smart board, it's called a one-screen, within every single classroom so that that teacher, if a kid was out of the classroom, had the ability to project themselves into the homes of those students. We hired an instructional aide at the middle school to address different learning loss issues that they were having. And we also took the opportunity to hire a STEM teacher within Pershing County Middle School, something that we've always wanted to do and we couldn't. Within ARP, it's $1.1 million. We're currently sitting between 60 and 70% spent. If it shows a little less than that, we have a request for reimbursement coming our way on that. But our MTSS, our social worker, so our coordinator and our social worker are all part of that grant. We also have something that was near and dear to me and something we pushed forward was outside mental health supports and services. We contract with Zephyr Wellness out of Reno. They come out to Pershing 3 days a week. They provide mental health services to our students as well as our staff. Why it was important to me was because we don't have those levels of services within our small community. Much like Mr. Klein mentioned about his stories and supports, that's all of us that are out there in the frontier. We were able to provide those services and we continue to provide them in a way that you didn't have to qualify for Medicaid or Medicare or whichever M it is today, right? I always get them confused on which ones it is. Where before, underneath the federal dollars that were there or programming of like Project Aware and some of those, you had to meet certain requirements to receive services within those. And by doing it through this, I'm able to contract out those and also identify any child or any staff member that needs that service at any time. I'm able to have that person in place. And so we've continued that with our ARP and look forward to that partnership we've had. Technology one-to-one, device replacement costs that continue to hit us. We've used ARP to touch on some of that, as well as early on within the ARP was some of the cleaning supplies, the floor scrubbers, and I call them foggers, but they're the backpack things that allowed our custodians to go in and fog classrooms throughout the day. When the kids weren't in there, we were able to keep those things and hopefully be able to control spread the best that we could. Check my notes here. Well, I'll stop there and say if you have questions, I'll be willing to answer whatever you may have.
I think you pretty much covered it. Members, do you have any questions? Okay.
Man, I must have put you to sleep.
No, we're awake. We're awake.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to our last district of the day, White Pine County. The next time we'll do this, we'll start at the other end of the alphabet. Okay.
Thank you for having us. We are scripted today on ours to avoid going long. So I have my timer on. My name's Adam Young. I'm the superintendent of the White Pine County School District, as well as the choir teacher. I want to make sure to get that on record. And these are my colleagues.
My name is Stephanie Walter. I'm a special education teacher at David E. Norman Elementary and the association president at White Pine.
I am Terry Borgoff. I am the board president of our Board of Trustees.
You can see in front of you 2 documents that are going to guide all of the comments that we have for you today. We want to work through those very, very quickly because they are important with framing this discussion. So our values define the behaviors that we hold ourselves accountable to on a daily basis.
Our theories of action outline the research. Our theories of action outline the research-based strategies we believe will leverage progress toward our goals.
I'm going to ask one thing. If you guys are going to switch up who's speaking, say your name before you speak. It will help our secretary keep record. Thank you.
No, go ahead. We'll say our name each time.
Terry Borgoff, our goals detail the measurables we use to gauge progress towards our vision.
Adam Young, our vision is to collaboratively grow leaders who are going to change the world.
Stephanie Walter, our profile of a leader is in draft form. It describes the meaningful and holistic competencies we nurture our students toward during their K-12 experience.
Terry Borgoff, we have 1,250 leaders who are students, 110 leaders who are certificated staff, and 80 leaders who are support staff.
Adam Young, in 2022, 89% of our students graduated, 42% earned an advanced diploma, 15% a college and career ready diploma, 52% of our students participated in dual enrollment, and 79% in CTE. We have a STEAM academy and world competitive robotics teams. Our students are musicians, actors, scientists, mathematicians, writers, readers, welders, mechanics, nurses-to-be, horticulturalists, culinary artists, visual artists, and computer scientists.
Stephanie Walter, we have invested heavily in developing world-class Tier 1 instruction in literacy and math. These investments yielded gains in proficiency for all students pre-COVID as well as post-COVID. We believe gains would be even more substantial if the assessments used were meaningful to students. We explicitly teach leadership as well as integrating it into every facet of school life. These investments have and will continue to address Title I students, special education students, and diverse learners of all types.
Terry Borgoff. We partner with community entities to support students before school, after school, on Fridays, and in summer learning.
Adam Young, as you've heard, the local budget process from many districts, we're in the middle of that right now. You can read what that looks like in the next couple of bullets that are there in front of you. But it is ongoing. It's something that we do collaboratively with our stakeholders. And so we have tentative ideas about how we intend to spend this money, but we do not have final answers for you at this point in time. You can also see a chart that's right below that says anticipated changes in funding. If you review that, the yellow sections show that across the biennium, our increase will be approximately $3.8 million. And so in the next couple minutes, we'd like to outline for you what existing costs will be covered by that $3.8 million, and then what will be left that we intend to spend based on those strategic actions that we outlined for you just a moment ago. You can see the inflationary factors, which my colleagues have spoken about at length. We're not going to go through all of those because I think you get the gist of how those affect the school districts. But those come to approximately $600,000 in increased expenses beyond what the current budget accounts for.
Stephanie Walter, 3 schools exited CSI or ATSI status. The students and staff have worked so hard, but it results in reduced access to federal funds. To clarify, the better we do, the less we get. We want to continue to provide college and career readiness access to Title I, special education, EL, and all students in the schools through maintaining the following programs and positions: absorption of position associated with CSI funds, the David E. Norman STEAM Instructional Coach, the DEN STEAM Academy, the DEN STEAM Extra Duty Pay and Stipends, DEN Literacy Coach Interventionist, the District-Wide Math Coach Interventionist, White Pine Middle School Instructional Coach Interventionist, and Lund Instructional Coach Interventionist, for a total of $600,000.
Terry Borgoff. Federal relief funds have been essential in supporting students over the last 3 years. We have added instructional and support services that directly enhance offerings available to Title I, special education, EL, and all students. Absorption of ESSER and fund balance expenditures include professional development, distance learning teacher, district-wide music teacher, White Pine Middle School health and social studies teachers, White Pine High School English and math teachers, Friday and summer learning, compensation adjustments from 2023 totaling $900,000.
As noted earlier, our district leadership team, finance committee, and board of trustees are currently prioritizing recommendations that are aligned to our performance plan. And you can see a list of those under the theories of action that are on the graphic that was on the first page of this handout. Theory of action 1, in continuing to invest in world-class instruction. So to clarify, these are, after absorbing the costs that we've already described, these we're transitioning now into describing ways that we would like to spend the money that is remaining based on what our strategic priorities are. Theory of action 1, providing world-class Tier 1 instruction. We need to still restore, through previous funding cuts, necessary core teachers at all levels. Provide literacy, math, and STEAM professional learning for our wonderful educators. Add required but personalized learning time to the school year. This addresses both intervention and acceleration for special education, Title I, EL, and all students. So to clarify, we're looking at adding instructional days to our school year as one of our theories of action. Theory of action 2, continuing to build student and staff leadership. This includes instructional resources for students and staff, professional learning for our staff, as well as extra duty pay for events, clubs, time, and experiences. Theory of action 3, develop community partnerships around high expectations. This includes home visits, community outreach events, and services for our very most needy students. And theory of action 4, investing in student and staff well-being. We would like to add additional licensed clinical social workers and other wraparound and support students for our services, for our most needy students. So of that 3.8 million, we outlined what some of the existing costs are that we're going to absorb. These actions that our board and our leadership team and our community are currently contemplating add up to around $1 million or so in that 3.8 million.
Stephanie Walter, this leaves about $700,000 for investing in our world-class employee leaders. A 1% cost of living allowance for all employees equates to approximately $100,000. Even with the increased funding, difficult choices lay ahead.
Terry Borgoff, more on the educator pipeline in White Pine County. We are trying to invest in student and staff well-being, ongoing teacher mentoring program. Mentors earn stipends and new teachers are paid for their additional time. Career continuum teachers can become collaborative team leaders, mentors, STEAM teachers, and coaches to own additional responsibility and earn additional compensation. Staff share leadership responsibilities and decision-making with principals and district office staff. Retention incentives and longevity incentives are both currently provided. Professional development occurs on Fridays and teachers are paid for their time. And we have our Grow Our Own Teachers program partnerships with State CTE Office and Great Basin College for current high school students that want to be teachers.
It's come up a lot today, but we feel it important to speak to some additional items, not only around the staffing shortage, but that particularly do apply to that. So one of them is education funding, as we know, and we appreciate what you have done as legislators for us in this session very much. But it has been neglected in Nevada for decades. We do all know that. The minimal increases over the last 30 years have not kept up with inflation, and district budgets have slowly eroded, and most people don't even know what is missing because it's been gone for so long. And I want to highlight as well, especially for our district, and there are others, but construction funding just doesn't exist in White Pine School District. When districts are at the tax cap, as we are, and have small tax bases anyway, no revenue exists for new facilities. Teaching in 85-degree classrooms one day and then 55-degree classrooms the next day in 1909 and 1913 facilities is rough on people, students, and educators.
Stephanie Walter, state and federally mandated requirements take teachers away from doing what they are good at. We became teachers to change lives, not to fill out forms and check boxes. And just for a moment, I did a little bit of math in preparation for this, and I don't think that people understand. Students K-5 take 90 standardized tests before they go to middle school in 6th grade. Each testing cycle is 3 weeks long. Do the math on the instructional time that is lost on administering standardized tests, and then wonder why our academic achievement isn't higher.
Terry Borgoff, the Nevada School Performance Framework star rating system is focused too much on testing. It completely leaves out students' social-emotional development, leadership growth, and innovative programs that exist in school. Teachers, principals, and districts feel like they must cut everything out that will not be tested. It is demoralizing.
In addition, the Smarter Balanced Assessment and the ACT are completely the wrong tools to be using to measure students' and schools' success. They are meaningless in the lives of many families and not useful as instructional tools. They have to go. Students and schools are #more than just a score.
Stephanie Walter, educators are doing more than ever to meet students' needs. We wash kids' clothes, we feed students, we take care of their personal hygiene to the point that we have a teacher who set up with a local dentist pro bono dental care for kids whose parents weren't providing it for them. We make home visits, we work through extremely challenging behaviors, and more. These heavy burdens take a physical, but even more so an emotional toll. Personally, my daughter is a sophomore in college. She wants to be a teacher. I have begged her not to. Begged her. And the worst part is that I know she would be great.
Effective accountability is reciprocal. Our board holds our superintendent accountable. He holds his staff accountable. We invite you to hold yourselves accountable as well by recognizing that while essential and long overdue, this funding is only part of the solution to Nevada's educational challenges. We urge you to continue to invest in Nevada's future by provisioning all of the funds recommended in the Commission's report and the Invest platform. This will allow districts to both add programs to address specific student needs as well as compensate their valuable employee leaders, giving hope to current and future educators who want to change the world.
We invite you to make a trip to White Pine County. Learn for yourself what our successes and needs are.
Additionally, I want to, Stephanie Walter, sorry. Mike's not on. Stephanie Walter. Additionally, I want to go a little bit further into something that was mentioned earlier, which was the discrepancy between administrative and teaching salaries. So I did a little bit of math in the 8 hours that I was sitting in my chair. I am at the top of our pay scale. I've been teaching in Nevada for 15 years. I did a little bit of math, and Adam, who's the superintendent, has a higher daily rate than I do. But if you do the math on the hours that he works as opposed to the hours that I'm contracted to work, he makes $2 more an hour. My principal is a 12-year administrative veteran. She makes $4 an hour less than I do. So it may seem that their salaries are significantly higher than ours, and if you just look at the amount, that is accurate, but they work so much more and they do so much more. My principal never stops working. I receive emails from her, and not with an expected response, but at all times. She goes home from school at 6:30 at night and continues to work on her laptop until she falls asleep on her couch. Do you want to do parent engagement, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay,
She's on a roll.
So, Assemblywoman Anderson, as to your question, I am a CPI, crisis prevention interventionist, and I have done 2 trainings this year on site with staff as to de-escalation and restorative practices. We have a parent engagement strategist in our school. They have taught, I think, 6 or 8 evenings of parenting classes to try to educate parents on how to do better and be better. We've had several district-wide PDs on restorative practice, but we are educating our staff at the school level.
With regard specifically to ESSER funding, and I'll just highlight this in a minute or less because we've already talked about it on the second front page of the handout that you have. That outlines some of our ESSER expenditures over the last 3 years. But as a synopsis, all of our ESSER 1 funds are spent, all of our ESSER 2 funds are spent, and our ESSER 3 funds will be spent by the end of August or so after we provision all of our summer learning opportunities that exist. Besides the positions that are highlighted there that we're absorbing with part of this $3.8 million, we've also spent ESSER funds on the restorative practices training that Stephanie spoke of, as well as coaching. Individuals coming in to help give us on-the-ground feedback about how to be better at that. We have, with our world-class literacy and math resources, we've made a lot of purchases there with how to try to support students and teachers in that. COVID safety items, PPE, all of that, obviously. Blended learning strategies to help our teachers, a distance learning teacher over the course of the last couple of years, and then also, as was mentioned by one of my colleagues, retention incentives, because we were open from day one that we could be open again, including the summer of 2020 when we had students on our campuses the minute that we could. So that's how we've spent a lot of that COVID money. So there might be more. We know it's been a long day for all of you, just like it has for us. And I, again, just want to conclude by thanking you as legislators for your service. We know that you're here on a Saturday as well, serving our state, serving our students, and we look forward to continued partnerships with you as we try to make this heavy lift for the good of all of our students in the state.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for your passion and the work that you're doing with our kids. We can feel it. My daughter is a special education teacher. My niece is an administrator. My husband, professor, as is my oldest son. So I hear your passion. I also hear your pain, and I felt it, and I have these conversations in our household as well. Thank you for the presentation. I think we have one question and a comment. Assemblyman Miller and then Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. And while I have you all here, just wanted to ask you, how have you been addressing mental health with your students and your staff, and what's your plan moving forward? Thank you.
It looks like my colleague wants to jump in on that right away, so please do.
Stephanie Walter. So in my building alone, we have a PBIS program in place, and students can go in through an app on their Chromebook if they are experiencing any type of difficulty and send an alert that they're feeling angry, they feel like they need to talk to someone, or they feel like they're in crisis. And one of our 3 SEL employees will respond immediately to them and address their issue. We have the thing at the high school, what is that, that's on the back of everybody's?
Safe Place.
The Safe Place, where students can make an 800 number call and anonymously report any experiences that they are having that are negative that can be addressed by the administration immediately.
Adam Young, for the record, and if I'll just add a couple caveats there, and thank you for that. In addition to that, I want to go back to just the idea of restorative practices in general, that a huge part of that is the explicit instruction with students on how to regulate, how to deal with conflict, how to navigate your way through difficult situations. So we are Leader in Me schools in White Pine. That's why we focus on leadership so much. And a good part of that Tier 1 instruction, while it's focused on, the buzzword of leadership, is all about leading myself, leading with others, and then leading towards resolution when there is conflict. So we do a lot of explicit, direct instruction with regard to mental health, well-being, problem solving, and all of those things to try to get in front of that. But I don't want to minimize the fact that that's still just a really, really huge need in White Pine County, just like it is everywhere else. People are tired. And when you're tired, you get cranky and you say things that, that just, so repairing the harm, going through all of that restorative process, it's something that we have definitely taken to heart. But we've also hired additional staff to help with those needs as well. We'd like to hire more, as was outlined in this presentation.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, and thank you for your words, your emotions. And not really a question, but I know that I am not the educator on this panel. I believe also Senator, the chair of the Senate Finance is also, and I know many of us have friends and family members that are also educators. Both for the school district that is presenting right now, and then for many of you also in the audience, you have truly shown the passion that is needed to be a great educator. But more importantly, I think, especially in White Pine, you have clearly shown that it's a family that takes time to be able to disagree with each other, but then also to agree with each other to find solutions to help people. And so I want to thank you for your passion, for your emotion, and the heart that you have for our kids is very evident. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Chair, for that much time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I really wanted to thank both of you, the chairs, for putting this together. I don't know if this has been done before, but wow, how insightful to learn all the different counties, the school districts, all of your passion. Thank you. I feel I'm a better informed legislator. And thank you for all of you for what a long day. And we didn't get cranky, I don't think, with each other. So thank you all for just being here at the drive and sharing all the information. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I thank you so much. And when we do this, next session, I will start at the end of the alphabet. So members, that brings us up to the last item on our agenda. But before going to that last item, which is public comment, I just want to thank each one of the district superintendents for joining us here today in person. And for those that couldn't join in person, sending a substitute, no pun intended. As we started today's meeting, I said that Chair Dondara-Loop and I, along with the legislative leadership, felt it was extremely important to hear directly from you in the ways that you have utilized the funding that you have received, looking towards funding you're going to receive, and also, which is really important, hearing the challenges that you're all facing. Because as I said at the beginning, each county is different, and how you're handling things and the uniqueness of each one of your districts, the only people that could share that was you. So I thank you for being here. I think I can speak for all of my colleagues and all of you. Our first priority is taking care of our kiddos, right? And we do that by taking care of the staff that's teaching them, the staff that's at the school around them, because there's no one in a school that doesn't touch a child. Everyone remembers that principal that knew their name. They remember the nurse, that counselor, or the school monitor, or the crossing guard. Everyone that comes in contact with our kiddos are important, and we want to make sure that everyone is made whole. And I felt it was really important, we felt it was really important to have your voices heard today. So thank you. I know it was a really long day. I'm sorry about that, but I think the information that came out was really important, and I think that makes us, as my colleague said, much better legislators as we look at not just the numbers of this fiscal committee, but the people that are behind those numbers. So, thank you. We will go to the very last item on our agenda, which is public comment. I don't know if there's anyone that has stayed with us online, but if you are and you want to call in, our number is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID number is 825-9529-3875, and then press pound. And the one thing I did fail to say is that when we look at the numbers, Nevada has a small pie that we try to cut to take care of all the needs, and the needs are growing, but the pie hasn't grown with those numbers, right? So at some point, we are truly going to have to, as a state, look at what it takes to address all those needs and being serious about what those resources are and bringing in more resources to address the growing needs. So with that, we'll go to public comment here in Carson City.
Brian Lee, the Executive Director of the Nevada State Education Association. First of all, I'd like to thank each of the committee members for spending a very long Saturday on rural education issues. I started off with Saturday, then I wrote long Saturday, and I ended very long Saturday. As I have traveled the state for the last 8 years as the NSEA Executive Director, I have seen the great and varied needs of our rural students. NSEA stands for the proposition that every Nevada student deserves access to an exceptional public education. Yet much has been made of the $2,000 per pupil increase under the pupil-centered funding formula that has been proposed in the budget. Yet not every student will be receiving such an increase. Some pupils in 3 districts will be receiving no increase. Pupils in some of the other districts will see only a fraction of the purported $2,000 increase. Additionally, well-intentioned programs to match educator raises will do little to improve education if the districts lack the funding to raise educator salaries in the first place. As you have heard today, some districts are projecting no increase for salaries for any educator in their district. Others are proposing projected salary increases that fall far below those of their peers. As we have also heard, educator salaries and increases are greatly needed to recruit and retain educators. A matching program would also fail to account for the needs of districts that do not have open contracts open during the applicable period. As you have also heard today, the districts that have presented are attempting to do the best they can with the funding that they possess. But it is simply more costly in a variety of different ways to educate rural students than some in the urban areas, due to economies of scale, the cost of maintaining old equipment and buildings, the cost of increased costs of transportation, among dozens of other reasons you've heard today. The lack of parity between the Clark County on starting teacher wages and neighboring Nye County is not due to the exceptionalism of Clark County or a deficiency on the part of Nye County. Both wish to have high starting teacher pay. It has to do with the lack of the current ability under the existing funding formula to adequately respond to cost discrepancies between educating students in these two separate counties, which neighbor each other. In order to ensure that an exceptional public education is had by all Nevada students, these cost discrepancies should be adequately accounted for. There are some places within the funding formula that they are accounted for, and there are economies of scale and so on, and transportation increases, but we do not believe that they are adequate because we can see in the outputs that the inputs on the formula are not sufficing. So as you continue your budget considerations, I ask that you join with the Nevada State Education Association in its commitment to ensure that every Nevada student, whether they are in a rural area or an urban area, have access to an exceptional public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association. Not going to read the written comments that we submitted, but I will say a year ago when NSEA started talking about time for 20, many looked at us like we were from another planet. But our members have been living many of the same stories that you heard today. Chronic underfunding and the impact of the pandemic overwhelmed educators and schools. The vacancy crisis is severe everywhere in Nevada, and you can't do education without people. A source of frustration for me this session has been the talk of historic education funding. Not to say $2 billion isn't a lot of money, it's a whole lot of money. But 16% inflation in a little over 2 years is also incredibly high. So as you heard time and time again today, districts receiving additional state revenue, other than the 3 that aren't going to get any, will be using most of these funds to cover increased costs. There is no windfall for education in GovRec. I brought a prop. It's a slide from the Commission on School Funding that Chair Guy Hobbs presented to the legislature. I don't know if it's going to stay there. I'll hold it. Earlier this session. And this slide illustrates Nevada setting a goal to reach optimal funding in 10 years. But on the chart, you see that while per pupil funding goes up by more than $2,000 from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 24, most of that from that $1 billion increase. When you compare the difference between those per pupil amounts and the optimal funding, you see that we only closed the gap by $96. So in other words, implement GovRec, and we will be, in Nevada, $96 closer to the goal that this legislature set to reach optimal funding in 10 years. And we haven't heard much about the recommendations from the Funding Commission to raise revenue in the report that they delivered in November. I'll say that while I've expressed concerns about the utility of this hearing today, I have to admit that this has actually been a worthwhile use of a Saturday. And this is the most optimistic I've been in this legislative session, at least in the first 47 days. And I was particularly encouraged, I know he doesn't like to look at me, but the remarks of Speaker Yeager about using rainy day funds to help meet this crisis. When it's raining today, stashing away $2.4 billion in reserves isn't the right way to go. Yesterday, school classified staff with SEIU Local 99 in Los Angeles won a 30% raise. I hope we each can commit right now to do everything in our power to get every Nevada educator at least a 20% raise. Doing so will make future conversations about school district accountability so much more meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. See no one else here in Carson City to make public comment, and by looking at the camera in Las Vegas, oh, I have one person coming down. Come on down.
Madam Chair, I would like to ask permission to discuss AB 308. This is the new Assembly Bill presentation or proposal to all of you regarding the J-1 visa program, the J-1 visa teachers, bringing teachers from outside of the United States to teach in our schools in Nevada. How does this impact Nevada? Right now, you have heard every superintendent state we are struggling to recruit educators. We are just struggling. Montana does not let us in anymore. They used to. We used to bring them from Montana. They shut that pipeline down for us. We no longer have that option. You've heard the superintendents express our concerns and our frustration, and we're going online, we're creating videos, we're selling ourselves. The salary will have an impact, but this Assembly Bill 308 will also have an impact. Please, if any of you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me personally, as I do have 8 J-1 visa teachers in Mineral County School District right now. In this bill, Section 7 states that this bill will go into effect July 1st, 2023. Section 5 states that the provisions of Section 3 of this act do not apply to the contract or partnership existing on July 1st, 2023, but do apply to any renewal or extension of such contract. This would have a dramatic impact on Mineral County School District. We would lose 8 more teachers with little to no prospects. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to make public comment?
Diana Isom, second grade teacher at Hawthorne Elementary School. I've got to be completely honest, when I wrote a statement to be read for the public comment yesterday, I do not feel comfortable reading it today after today's session, because when I came in here today, I had such a giant chip on my shoulder. But after staying here all day and listening to your questions and listening to the superintendents and how they are valuing their teachers and how you are all taking it in and embracing it, it leaves me more hopeful for the future. So I wanted to thank you for that. I do want to say something just quickly that may not have been just a little bit addressed today, and that was because White Pine kind of opened the door on that. So I am just going to read part of it, but I'm going to leave out some of the stuff that I wrote last night. Nevada teachers are definitely aware of the significant deficit in students' reading, math, and science skills, as well as proficiency levels. However, considering the social and emotional deficits experienced due to trauma by the majority of the students, especially in the rural areas, this is of minimal concern. Districts deserve the chance to prioritize social and emotional learning in order to provide students equal opportunity rather than determining success based on standardized assessments. Social emotional competencies are the way to bridge the achievement gap. One of the first courses taught to educators includes Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the foundational areas of physical and psychological safety and how they must be met prior to the retention of academic content and knowledge. If our goal is truly to rebuild schools and improve graduation rates, this is the way to start. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else here in Carson City that would like to make public comment, and no one in Las Vegas, we'll go to the phone lines. BPS, do we have any callers wishing to make public comment?
To provide public comment, press *9 now on your phone to take your place in the queue. Caller, press *9 to, or *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, legislators. Thank you for taking your time on a Saturday to address the issues of our school districts around the state. My name's Tom Hendricks. I live in Lyon County. I'm going to speak about an issue that has not been discussed today, and that's the violence in our schools. For decades, we've seen a change in the perspective of violence in our schools. Bullying has always been around, but now students seem to be desensitized to it, mainly by what I believe is media sources. They view violence, firearms, and weapons in a different sense than they used to. They don't have a realistic view of the consequences. In our county, there have been numerous weapons incidents at our schools in recent months. It's not a matter of if, but when we will be faced with more serious incidents. We want our students to have the best education possible, but that can't happen without a safe environment. Many students are fearful of coming to school and being subjected to violence, while others simply choose to remain online for their education rather than being subjected to the current school environment. I think we can all agree that the quality of education and the life skills learned in a classroom environment are greater than online. Therefore, we need to make our schools safer to increase the quality of education for our students. I understand that we don't want schools to look like a prison, but reality is that we're going to have to make some trade-offs to ensure safety and increase confidence that they will be safe. There can be no higher priority than increasing funding for all safety measures that address deficiencies in our school system. It can be debated as to how we can accomplish this, but certainly single point entry in all our schools, being able to monitor all entrances to the school buildings, and metal detectors need to be considered, as well as any specific identifiable issues that are site-specific. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for giving your time to the legislature.
Thank you so much for calling in with your comments. PPS, do we have anyone else joining us?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no more callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. So I think that brings us to the end of a very long but informative day. And I appreciate you all staying attentive and patient and kind. Please be careful driving home, and we will see you all soon. And since I have all your numbers, I may be calling with questions. So look forward to that call. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.